Chapter 1939 Holy Dragon Clan. 1939 Holy Dragon Clan. Well, if you're not going to tell me where to find the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, I'll take my leave now. Xuan said shortly after putting away the Dragon God's vengeance. Without giving the Holy Dragon Clan an opportunity to speak, Xuan turned around and flew away. Wait a second. The bronze immortal from the Holy Dragon Clan tried to chase after Xuan but was blocked by the black-robed dragons. Where do you think you're going? We're not finished here yet. Get lost. Their battle continued, but in a sudden shift, the tides turned. The Holy Dragon Clan, who had been on the brink of defeat just moments earlier, now surged with newfound strength, quickly overpowering the black-robed dragons. Realizing they could no longer stand against the Holy Dragon Clan, the black-robed dragons retreated. But instead of taking to the skies, they plunged into the sea below, vanishing beneath the waves. We need to return to the Dragon's Spiral Mountain and report what happened here to the others, said the bronze immortal. Meanwhile, Xuan returned to the soaring phoenix and continued to watch them fight from a safe distance. Are you sure you should have just left them like that? Feng Yuxiang asked. She thought he was going to save the Holy Dragon Clan. It's fine. I doubt they'd believe anything I say. My purpose was just to reveal my presence to them and make them question my identity, so when I show up at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain later, they won't immediately turn me away. I see, but what if they perish at the hands of those black-robed dragons? Xuan then responded in confidence, although they are fighting with each other, none of them are showing real killing intent, so it is unlikely they are going to kill each other. If things get real dangerous, I'll intervene again. In the end, events unfolded just as Xuan had predicted. The clash between the Holy Dragon Clan and the black-robed dragons concluded without any true casualties. Shortly after the Holy Dragon Clan left, the soaring phoenix began moving again, slowly following behind them. At the same time, the rest of the Holy Dragon Clan was in an uproar due to the ancient Monolith's sudden activity. Shortly after the ancient Monolith sensed the Dragon God's vengeance, nearly every single big shot and important figure within the Holy Dragon Clan appeared at the Monolith to witness the phenomenon for themselves. It's true. The ancient Monolith has awakened. Does this mean that Dragon Goddess Yao is really back? What should we do now? The Holy Dragon Emperor then spoke. We must prepare for Dragon Goddess Yu's return. Though it remained uncertain whether Dragon Goddess Yao had truly returned, or when she might appear, the Holy Dragon Clan dared not take any chances. They began preparing in earnest for her grand return. It stopped. Moments later, the ancient monolith fell silent once more, its presence returning to stillness. However, that did not change their plans, and the Holy Dragon Clan went on to prepare for Dragon Goddess Yu's return regardless. Shortly after, the Holy Dragon Clan received news from the group that Xuan had encountered in the Sea of Dragons. What? A human who knows about Dragon Goddess Yao was looking for the directions to our Dragon Spiral Mountain? The Holy Dragon Emperor almost couldn't believe his ears. Besides those living in the Dragon Spiral Mountain and those who lived near it, knowledge of Dragon Goddess Yao was almost non-existent. Does this human have something to do with the ancient monolith's activation? He wondered inwardly as he received this news. Where is this human now? He asked the messenger. According to the scouts, he left before they could stop him. What? How could a mere human escape from their grasp? Holy Dragon Emperor questioned out loud with raised eyebrows. They were stopped by those sea bastards, whom they encountered and was fighting before meeting the human. Seriously? The Holy Dragon Emperor rubbed his eyes and continued, how long before they return? They should return in 45 days. As you wish, Your Majesty. Once the messenger left, the Holy Dragon Emperor lifted his head to look at the tall ceiling and mumbled, Are you truly back, Dragon Goddess? 43 days later, the dragons who had encountered Xuan finally returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. They were summoned without delay by the Holy Dragon Emperor, who demanded they recount every detail of their encounter. Their encounter with that human coincides almost perfectly with the activation of the ancient monolith. And a spear of such unfathomable power, is it? The Holy Dragon Emperor mused silently, his thoughts deep and unreadable. Your Majesty, what should we do about them? They're becoming more brazen by the day, asked the bronze immortal, who was still unaware of the ancient monolith's activation. The Azure Dragon Clan, huh? Stubborn as ever, they want rest until the dragon's spiral mountain is theirs, the Holy Dragon Emperor muttered, his gaze distant. I have no desire for war, but neither can we surrender the mountain. He let out a weary sigh. So war is unavoidable, huh? The bronze immortal shook her head. Unfortunately. Anyway, you are dismissed. Thank you for the report. I do not deserve your recognition, Your Majesty. Time passed swiftly, and within a week, the soaring phoenix had brought Yuan close enough to see the dragon's spiral mountain rising on the horizon. Unlike its counterpart on Earth, the dragon's spiral mountain in the seventh heaven was vastly more expansive, so immense that the one on Earth would amount to barely 10% of its size. After another day of travel, the soaring phoenix finally reached the dragon's spiral mountain. However, before they could get close to the land, several figures emerged from the skies, surrounding their flying treasure and blocking any further approach. Chapter 1940 A Real Dragon Emperor. 1940 A Real Dragon Emperor, identify yourselves. A group of golden-robed dragons surrounded the soaring phoenix. My name is Xiao Yang, and this is my traveling companion, Shi Li. What purpose do you have at our dragon's spiral mountain? That doesn't concern you, Yuan calmly said. Doesn't concern us? We, the Holy Dragon Clan, are the rightful owners of the dragon's spiral mountain. Everything related to the mountain is of our concern. If you're looking to cause trouble here, get lost before we forcefully remove you. Hearing their threats, Yuan laughed out loud. I heard the Holy Dragon Clan are Dragon Goddess Yu's loyal followers. What if I told you that I am Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy? Will you still tell me to leave then? What? Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy? A wave of shock swept through the crowd, but it quickly faded, replaced by rising anger, as though Yuan's words had been a deliberate insult to them. One of them sneered, I was wondering what sort of excuse you'll give, but Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy? What absolute rubbish. Another spoke with contempt in his voice, who do you think you're trying to fool? Why would Dragon Goddess Yao choose a lowly human as her envoy? Yuan turned to look at the one who had just questioned him and responded with narrowed eyes, that's a funny thing to say, considering that Dragon Goddess Yao was once a loyal servant to a lowly human. Yuan's words instantly shifted the atmosphere, drawing frowns from the surrounding dragons, yet not one of them could offer a rebuttal. If you claim to be Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy, you must have proof. Let us see it. Yuan fell silent, mostly because he didn't have anything that could be used as evidence. What? You don't have anything to prove your identity? Why am I not surprised? How dare you try to take advantage of us using Dragon Goddess Yu's name? You'll pay for your crimes with death. Kill them. The next moment, all of the dragons lunged at the soaring phoenix. Seeing this, Yuan activated his dragon transformation and retrieved Dragon God's vengeance. However, he only intended to scare them, so he didn't attack them. Of course, the dragons were all frozen from fear the moment they sensed the Dragon God's vengeance. Yuan then spoke, it's not that I don't want to show you proof. Information about Dragon Goddess Yao is highly sensitive, and you're simply not qualified to hear it. Take me to your leader, the head of the Holy Dragon Clan. The dragons exchanged uncertain glances, but before any could speak, a powerful presence descended upon them. A figure emerged, radiating a domineering aura that commanded instant reverence. He, too, was a dragon, clad in a resplendent golden robe nearly identical to the golden dragon robe in Yuan's possession. Yuan couldn't discern the depth of his cultivation, but instinct told him this was a being who had stepped into the God Ascension realm. At the sight of him, the surrounding dragons immediately bowed in unison. We greet His Majesty, the Holy Dragon Emperor. In the next instant, several more dragons appeared, each radiating a profound and majestic presence, just a shade beneath that of the Holy Dragon Emperor himself. Seeing this, the dragons hastily greeted them. We greet the Holy Dragon Ancestor, Supreme Elder, Holy Princess, Holy Prince, Holy, enough. The Dragon Emperor suddenly interrupted. If Head allowed them to continue the greetings, they'd be there all day. He then turned to face Xuan with slightly narrowed eyes. He's clearly human, yet he possesses the ability to transform into a dragon. Only those with a pure and high-quality dragon bloodline can achieve such a feat, and yet, such individuals usually carry a strong dragon scent. But from him, I sense nothing of that sort, the Holy Dragon Emperor mused inwardly, his gaze sharp as he studied Yuan's dragon transformation. When he attempted to probe deeper into Yuan's body, a sudden chill crept down his spine. He couldn't quite identify it, but within Yuan's very bones, he sensed the presence of something ancient, something unfathomably profound, lying dormant yet quietly watching. Among the scarce fragments of knowledge surrounding dragon goddess Biyao, there was one rumor that stood out. It was said she possessed the power to bestow her talents upon any being, dragon or not. With her blessing, even the weakest of creatures, an ant, could wield the might of dragons, he recalled, the memory surfacing like a forgotten echo from a bygone era. Human, I heard your earlier words, the Dragon Emperor said, his tone calm yet laced with innate pride. I may not be the leader of the Holy Dragon clan, but my status within it is no less significant. Tell me, am I, the Dragon Emperor, worthy to see your so-called proof? This was Yuan's first encounter with a real Dragon Emperor. However, after encountering many ancient dragons within the primal expanse, the Dragon Emperor before him did not feel anything special. I don't mind showing you. Holy Dragon Emperor nodded and spoke, we can continue our conversation somewhere more private. Follow me. He turned around and flew inside the dragon's spiral mountain. Seeing this, Feng Yuxiang, who was still inside Yuan's dantian, continued the soaring phoenix to follow the Holy Dragon Emperor. Soon, they entered the dragon's spiral mountain. Although the other dragons didn't like the idea of letting someone as suspicious as Yuan enter their sacred territory, none of them could defy the Dragon Emperor's decision. Once the soaring phoenix entered the dragon's spiral mountain, the other powerhouses followed behind to ensure Yuan wouldn't try anything funny. Though their cultivations far surpassed Yuan's and they could probably kill him with a sneeze, an unshakable unease settled over them in the presence of the dragon god's vengeance. Meanwhile, the moment Yuan entered the dragon's spiral mountain, he could feel something stirring within him. This feeling, the 9 dragon symbols? Is it reacting to something within the dragon's spiral mountain? He wondered inwardly. Chapter 1941 Destroying the Ancient Monolith. 1941 Destroying the Ancient Monolith. After entering the dragon's spiral mountain, the Dragon Emperor led Yuan to the mouth of a colossal cave, its entrance veiled in a faint, ancient pressure. As they approached, the 9 dragon symbols within Yuan stirred restlessly, trembling with excitement. Whatever it was resonating with was inside the cave. This is the first time an outsider has visited this place, said Holy Dragon Emperor as they reached the entrance. It's an honor, Yuan smiled. However, if you fail to prove your identity, you won't be able to leave this place alive. Let's go. The Dragon Emperor entered the cave, and Yuan calmly followed him. She merely quietly trailed behind Yuan, staying close to him. Due to her lack of cultivation, just being in the presence of so many powerful beings was a challenge for her. After traversing a shadowed tunnel, they emerged into a vast, dimly lit cavern. At its center stood a towering monolith, ancient and imposing, its presence dominating the chamber in solemn silence. That monolith must be the cause for the 9 dragon symbols' unrest. Yuan narrowed his gaze at the ancient monolith. The Dragon Emperor came to a halt about a dozen meters from the monolith, then turned to face Yuan. Only those who hold the highest status within the Holy Dragon clan are permitted to enter this place, he said calmly. So rest assured, everyone present is just as qualified as I am to witness your proof. Yuan turned around to look at the others who followed them to the monolith and nodded, I don't mind. Then whenever you are ready. The Dragon Emperor and the others fell into a heavy silence, their gazes fixed on Yuan as they patiently awaited the proof of his claim as the envoy of Dragon Goddess Biyao. Since it has come to this point, let's just try summoning her. Yuan retrieved the Dragon God's vengeance again, unaware of the Holy Dragon clan's true intentions. They alone knew of the ancient monolith's ability to sense the presence of Dragon Goddess Biyao. And with Yuan's arrival coinciding perfectly with its recent awakening, they had a strong suspicion that he was the cause. They only needed to confirm their suspicions with their own eyes. However, when Yuan retrieved the dragon god's vengeance, the ancient monolith remained silent. This caused the Dragon Emperor and the others to raise their eyebrows. He's not the cause for the ancient monolith's awakening? If not him, then who was responsible? The Dragon Emperor let out a quiet sigh, his voice laced with disappointment as he spoke. He's not the one. Kill him. What? Yuan's eyes widened in shock at the sudden decree. He hadn't even had the chance to call upon Dragon Goddess Yao. "I'll handle him," said a girl with the appearance of a refined young lady. In the next moment, her aura flared, powerful and sharp, revealing her cultivation at the silver immortal realm. "You dare exploit the name of Dragon Goddess Yao? You wretched human, you'll pay for your insolence." With a flash of movement, she lunged at Yuan, her body partially transformed. Her right arm morphed into a massive, white-scaled limb that gleamed with draconic power as it tore through the air toward him. Yuan did not dare to underestimate her and immediately activated dragon transformation. The moment Yuan transformed, the ancient monolith behind the Dragon Emperor began trembling. However, nobody there noticed it since they were fully absorbed with Yuan's transformation. "Get behind me!" Yuan shouted, stepping forward to shield Shimeli as his gaze locked onto the charging young lady. A heartbeat later, their clash erupted. The sheer force of their collision sent shockwaves through the cavern, causing the very walls to tremble beneath the pressure. Though Yuan managed to block the attack, the impact sent him hurtling through the air, and he was thrown directly toward the ancient monolith, crashing into its surface a moment later with a resounding thud. "Yuan!" Shimeli exclaimed. "I'm fine," Yuan muttered as he rose to his feet. Though he hadn't suffered any injuries, the situation was far from ideal. No matter how talented he was, there was no way for him to defeat so many experts at once. Even if he could escape with his life intact, there was still Shimeli, who was his biggest concern. However, just as Yuan braced for the young lattice's next strike, he paused. Something was wrong. She, along with the other dragons, stood frozen, their eyes locked onto him, wide with disbelief, as if they were witnessing the impossible. It was then that Yuan noticed a subtle vibration behind him. The ancient monolith was trembling beneath his touch. Why is the ancient monolith reacting now? Is Dragon Goddess Yao nearby? The Dragon Emperor immediately spread his divine sense as far as possible, covering the entire Dragon Spiral Mountain and much more. However, he was unable to sense Dragon Goddess Yao. As the Dragon Emperor and the others anxiously scanned the area for any sign of Dragon Goddess Yao, a sudden flash of movement drew their eyes back to Yuan. The Dragon God's vengeance slipped free from his grasp, rising into the air to hover before him, gleaming with an eerie light. "Yao!" Yuan murmured, confused. The spear slowly tilted, its tip turning not toward the crowd, but toward Yuan, or more precisely, the ancient monolith behind him. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the Dragon God's vengeance surged forward without hesitation, transforming into a streak of light. Before anyone could react, it pierced the ancient monolith and rooted itself within, a structure long believed by the Holy Dragon clan to be utterly indestructible. "Why you destroyed the ancient monolith? Are you insane?" The Dragon Emperor roared in anger after snapping out of his daze. Even if Yuan were Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy, he wouldn't be spared for such blasphemy. But in the very next moment, the Dragon God's vengeance released a wave of profound aura, deep and ancient. From within its radiant glow, a figure slowly began to emerge, cloaked in divine presence. Once she fully materialized, she was revealed to be a woman of breathtaking beauty. Yet, none among the dragons spared a thought for her appearance, as her overwhelming presence was so overbearing that it engulfed the entire Dragon Spiral Mountain. And though none of the dragons recognized her appearance, not a single one of them doubted her identity for even a split second. She was none other than Dragon Goddess Yao. "Dragon Goddess," the Dragon Emperor began to speak, but his words faltered and died in his throat as Dragon Goddess Yao turned to face Yuan without even sparing them a glance. Yuan stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. Unlike her previous appearance, she was no longer a semi-transparent apparition. The dragon goddess standing before him radiated presence and substance, as though she had truly descended into the world once more. Yeo. Yuan breathed her name, the words slipping from his lips without thought. Without a word, dragon goddess Yeo stepped forward. In one fluid motion, she grasped his collar with a firm hand and pulled him into her before pressing her soft lips against his in a deep, passionate kiss that left everyone there in stunned silence. Chapter 1942 4 Pieces 1942 4 Pieces. What does this vixen think she's doing to my young master? Feng Yuxiang exclaimed, her voice filled with envy as she watched this unfold from Yuan's dantian. The members of the Holy Dragon clan stood frozen in place, eyes wide and jaws agape, as if the very ground had been pulled from beneath them. Some looked as though their souls had momentarily left their bodies, stunned beyond words by what they were witnessing. After what felt like an eternity, Dragon Goddess Yeo finally released Yuan and spoke. This doesn't mean I have forgiven you, so don't think for a second that you're out of the hot water. However, Yuan ignored her words and changed the topic, asking, I didn't know your soul wasn't in one piece. Why didn't you mention this before? Did you think a mere treasure could contain my soul as a whole? In order to survive, I had to split my soul into several pieces. I am fated to recover my soul, so there's no point mentioning it, she explained. Only a being of Dragon Goddess Yu's caliber could speak of splitting her soul with such casual ease. Even cultivators at the God Ascension realm wouldn't dare attempt such a feat, and realistically, not even a cultivation god might possess the ability to do what she had done. How many more pieces of your soul are still out there? Yuan then asked. I split my soul into 4 pieces, so there are still 2 pieces. Do you know where I can find them? No, since it was the dragon ancestor who safeguarded my soul. If you want to know, ask him. However, you'll eventually find them even if you don't. Because of fate, huh? Anyway. I've reached my limit, Dragon Goddess Yeo said softly, glancing down at her hand as it began to fade, turning slowly transparent. Her form had taken shape thanks to the recovery of a second fragment of her soul, but it was only temporary. Before she returned to the Dragon God's vengeance, Dragon Goddess Yeo turned to face the Holy Dragon clan and said, If I had a little more time, I would have punished you for baring your fangs at him, but I don't, so I'm willing to give you a second chance. Treat him as you would treat me. As for the young lady who had attacked Yuan, she stood frozen in place, mainly because Dragon Goddess Yu's gaze was directly on her. The sheer pressure of such a gaze caused her body to tremble non-stop, her clothes drenched in sweat. Without saying another word, Dragon Goddess Yeo returned inside the Dragon God's vengeance. A deafening silence settled over the cavern in the wake of Dragon Goddess Yu's departure. Not a single member of the Holy Dragon clan rose to their feet even long after her presence had faded. It was as if they dared not move, awaiting Yuan's permission. You guys can stand up now. Yuan eventually said, breaking the silence. The dragons slowly rose to their feet, nodding in silent acknowledgement. Their gazes lingered on Yuan, filled with questions they clearly wished to ask, yet none of them dared to speak them aloud. Knowing that his identity would be revealed sooner or later, Yuan decided to just reveal it himself. When I said that I was Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy, I lied, sorry. I'm actually the master of the 9 Divine Supreme, the Immortal Monarch. I know this is hard to believe, so I am willing to prove my identity. However, to his surprise, the Dragon Emperor shook his head and said, There's no need. We believe you. After all, the Dragon Goddess Yeo would only do something like that to the Immortal Monarch. Of course, despite his confident tone, his face was full of shock and disbelief. The Holy Dragon clan is at your service, Immortal Monarch. If you wish, would even be willing to go to war for you. Yuan shook his head and quickly said, That's not necessary. I didn't come to the Dragon Spiral Mountain to take advantage of the Holy Dragon clan. In that case, why did you come here? Was it to retrieve the Dragon Goddess soul from the ancient Monolith? No, that was just a coincidence. I came here because I need to use the Dragon Spiral Mountain's teleport formation. The teleport formation. May I ask for what purpose? It hasn't been activated ever since the Divine Heaven became the Nine Heavens. Do you know about players? You mean those from the missing fragment of the Divine Heaven who travel here with the help of the Celestial Emperor, those like you? Yuan calmly nodded. He was not surprised that the Dragon Emperor saw through his avatar since it had happened before. My real body is currently in the other world, but due to special circumstances, I am unable to return to it. In other words, I am stuck here as a soul avatar, and in order to return to my body, I will need to activate the Dragon Spiral Mountain's teleport formation and connect this world to my world, where the other Dragon Spiral Mountain exists. The Dragon Emperor nodded his head as he digested the information. I understand the situation. Unfortunately, we have a slight issue. The key to activating the formation is currently in the Azure Dragon Clan's possession. Azure Dragon Clan? Yuan raised his eyebrows. He recalled the dragons in black and blue robes from before. Yes, they're the Dragon Clan that commands the Sea of Dragons, and they've been trying to acquire the Dragon Spiral Mountain for centuries now. We lost the key to them several decades ago after losing to them in a certain battle. Why are they trying to acquire this place? Yuan asked out of curiosity. They never say it out loud and refute anything we say, but it's clear that they want the Dragon Spiral Mountain to appease the Great One, explained the Dragon Emperor. Appeasing the Great One. Yuan repeated in a mumble. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1944, Young Dragons. Chapter 1944, Young Dragons. A few hours after Yuan and Shimeli were given a living quarter, the Dragon Emperor showed up at their place. I have contacted the Azure Dragon Clan, but it may take a few days, if not weeks, before we get a response, he said. In the meantime, you can treat the Dragon Spiral Mountain as if it's your own home. I will do just that, Yuan nodded. Would you like to walk with me? I'll give you a tour around the place. There's also a lot I would still like to discuss with you. Sure. Can I come along? Shimeli asked. I don't see why you cannot. As they walked through the residential grounds with the Dragon Emperor leading the way, he suddenly spoke, his tone laced with concern. How is the Dragon Goddess? Is she, well? Yuan nodded and responded, she's fine. May I ask what happened to her? She disappeared right after the Divine Heaven split into the Nine Heavens and hasn't made an appearance until today. Let's just say we faced a powerful opponent. The Dragon Emperor fell silent. He couldn't fathom a being stronger than Dragon Goddess Biyao, who was so powerful that not even the Dragon Ancestor and the Great One could hold a candle against her. I'd like to ask you something as well, Yuan said, breaking the silence. Why does the Holy Dragon Clan devote itself to her? The Dragon Emperor glanced at him, then replied, it is in a dragon's nature to follow strength, and Dragon Goddess Biyao stands among the most powerful beings in existence. For many, that alone would be reason enough to revere her. But for us, there is another reason we worship her. Back then, the Holy Dragon Clan was of no great lineage, just an ordinary bloodline, struggling to survive. We stood on the brink of annihilation. He continued in a solemn voice, but Dragon Goddess Biyao descended in our darkest hour. She gave us a second chance, blessing us with a drop of her divine blood. That single act transformed our lineage, elevating our bloodline to rival even those of royal descent. Oh, I think I remember when that happened. Yuan suddenly said with a reminiscing expression on his face. Really? It was a time long before I was even born. The Dragon Emperor looked at him with surprise. Even now, he could hardly believe Yuan was the immortal monarch. As they wandered the Dragon Spiral Mountain, its residents would stare at them from a distance while mumbling to each other. That must be Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy. Why do you think he's here? I'm more interested in why Dragon Goddess Biyao chose a human to be her envoy. It's not that surprising if you consider that she used to follow a human around. You mean the immortal monarch? People claim he's human, but I do not believe it for a second. He was definitely a dragon disguising himself as a human, and you cannot convince me otherwise. The Dragon Spiral Mountain in the Nine Heavens closely resembled its counterpart on Earth, a towering peak with a spiraling path winding around its body. However, it was vastly larger in scale, both in height and breadth, soaring several times higher and far more expansive. Its colossal size was no coincidence. It was a deliberate tribute to Dragon Goddess Yu's overwhelming power. The mountain had been purposefully shaped to surpass the others, a testament to her unmatched divinity. The foot of the mountain was filled with stores, restaurants, and all the amenities one would expect from a thriving city. A little higher up the mountain lay the residential area, sprawling across most of its vast expanse and housing the majority of its inhabitants. The praying area and training grounds were situated above the residential area, and beyond that point, only those with significant status within the clan were permitted to ascend any higher. How many individuals does the Holy Dragon clan hold? Xuan asked as they arrived at the training grounds, where many young dragons could be seen sparring with each other while supervised by immortal experts. We have around 20,000 dragons within the Holy Dragon clan. It may seem like a lot, but we're actually one of the smallest dragon clans in the 9 heavens. The Azure Dragon clan, for example, has over 100,000 members within its clan. Moreover, only about 50 of us actually have the Holy Dragon bloodline. The young dragons at the training grounds quickly noticed the Dragon Emperor and bowed to him with respect. A few of them approached him and asked, "Your Majesty, who is this person? He also has a unique scent on him that I don't recognize," one of the young dragons asked as he looked at Xuan with curiosity. The Dragon Emperor smiled and declared, "This individual is a human, and the envoy of Dragon Goddess Yao." Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy? The young dragons stiffened in shock, and the realization hit them like thunder. Without hesitation, they bowed deeply to Xuan. "We greet the envoy of Dragon Goddess Yao." Though they didn't fully understand what the title entailed, the mere presence of her name within it was enough. That alone made it sacred. Xuan gave a casual wave of his hand and said, "No need for formalities. Just treat me like a friend." "Then, what exactly is an envoy?" one of the young dragons suddenly asked, curiosity gleaming in their eyes. "It's like a messenger or representative," Xuan replied with a faint smile. "In this case, I'm a messenger for Dragon Goddess Yao." "Wow. Does this mean that Dragon Goddess Yao sent you here? Why did she send you here? Does she have a message for us?" The young dragons bombarded Xuan with questions. "Enough. You're bothering him," the Dragon Emperor said sharply, his tone firm and commanding, bringing an immediate hush over the young dragons. "It's fine," Xuan said, and he began answering their questions one by one. "That's right, I was sent here by Dragon Goddess Yao. As for why I am here, I cannot tell you the full details, but it is related to the Azure Dragon clan." Chapter 1945, Young Dragons, 2. Chapter 1945, Young Dragons, 2, The Dragon Azure Clan. "Did the Dragon Goddess send you here to get rid of those pests trying to steal our home?" The young dragon's eyes sparkled when Xuan mentioned the Dragon Azure clan. "Who knows?" Xuan shrugged. A few of the young dragons then approached Shimeli and asked her, "Are you also Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy?" "No, I am not. I am just his traveling companion." "How old are you, senior sister?" one of them suddenly asked. "I stopped counting after 10,000 years, she calmly stated. "Huh? You're only at that level even after 10,000 years? You must be very lazy, senior sister." "What? Who are you calling lazy?" Shimeli's expression froze in disbelief after being called lazy. Though she was still considered young by dragon standards, the dragons before her were even younger, all under 1,000 years old. And yet, each one had a cultivation level that surpassed her own. Because of this, the young dragons could only view Shimeli, who was older yet weaker than them, as lazy in their eyes. "If you're not lazy, why is your cultivation so much lower than ours?" asked one of the young dragons, and the others stared at her with a suspicious gaze. That's because I grew up in a place with much less spiritual energy than you all," Shimeli explained. Even though she knew she wasn't lazy, Shimeli couldn't help but feel uneasy under the weight of so many young dragons' doubtful gazes. Yuan then spoke, we actually just arrived in the seventh heaven. Oh, the young dragons nodded their heads as if they understood the situation. Then, would you like to train with us, senior sister? Of course. She merely didn't hesitate to accept their offer. Have fun, Yuan said with a smile on his face. She merely nodded and followed the young dragons to the arena, where she began sparring with them first. Due to their difference in cultivation, they agreed not to use any martial techniques and focused purely on their skills. I guess she really wasn't lying. Although her cultivation is lacking, she's very experienced and skillful. She merely quickly earned the young dragon's respect with her skillful performance. However, despite her 10,000 years of experience, she was unable to secure a single victory. Out of 10 matches, she lost them all. It wasn't just their superior cultivation, the young dragons possessed exceptional technique, battle sense, and even physique. They were simply incomparably stronger than the dragons she would spar with within the ancient dragon city. Damn it. I knew I was weak, but I didn't expect myself to be this weak. Is this what it means to be a frog in a well? She merely mumbled as she lay on the arena, her body soaked in sweat. Don't look so down. You're very talented. I'm sure you'll catch up soon, Yuan said as he approached the arena. She merely turned her head to look at him without getting up and asked, if I have your seal, would it make it stronger? After a moment of silence, Yuan nodded, yes, you would undoubtedly become stronger with the Immortal Monarch's Supreme Seal. He answered with a serious face. However, I won't give you the seal if that's your reason for wanting it. She merely showed a bittersweet smile. I know. I was only joking. She immediately stood up and spoke loudly, all right. Let's spar again. Yuan turned to the Dragon Emperor. This is just a personal request of mine, but do you mind letting her train with you guys? Of course. The young one seemed to have taken a liking to her as well, the Dragon Emperor said with a faint nod. While her cultivation and experience are certainly lacking, I can sense a remarkable talent within her. My instincts also tell me her bloodline is unique, perhaps even one that could rival our own holy dragon bloodline. Yuan smiled and said, have you heard of the ancient dragon city? The Dragon Emperor's eyes widened. You mean to tell me that she's from that place? Not only that, but she's also from a royal bloodline. The Dragon Emperor turned to look at Shimeli and asked, what was her name again? Shimeli. Surnamed Shi. The Dragon Emperor trembled. You recognize it? Yuan raised an eyebrow. He nodded thoughtfully and said, there is another Dragon Emperor who bears the surname Shi. His clan resides in the 8th heaven. It may be nothing more than coincidence, but there's a chance their bloodlines are connected. The 8th heaven, huh? I'll be sure to visit them in the future. Sometime later, a young female dragon approached Yuan and bowed politely. Senior Envoy, may I respectfully request a spar with you? She asked with clear determination in her voice. Yuan turned to look at her. Though her appearance resembled that of a human teenager, she could very well be over 1,000 years old. Her cultivation was nothing to scoff at either, firmly at the peak of immortal ascension. The Dragon Emperor frowned, but before he could say anything, Yuan nodded with a smile. Why not? Thank you. The female dragon's face immediately brightened. Yuan followed her to an empty arena shortly after. Huh? Look over there. Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy is going to fight senior sister Xingran. Almost everyone at the training ground shifted their attention to Yuan. Xingran? Are you from the main bloodline? Yuan asked the female dragon after hearing her name. That is correct. I am the 4th youngest in the family, Xingran. Let's have a great match, senior envoy. Let's. Yuan and Xingran stood motionless on the stage. Neither made a move even moments later, almost as if they were waiting for the other to strike first. Senior Envoy, are you not to release the suppression on your cultivation? Xingran asked. This is my real cultivation, though. What? You're only at the peak of Divine Emperor? she exclaimed, not daring to believe him. Chapter 1946, Young Dragons, 3. Chapter 1946, Young Dragons, 3. There's no way Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy is only a divine emperor. You must be teasing me. Xingran refused to believe that would be Yuan's true cultivation. Yuan smiled and said, but it's the truth. No way. After a moment of awkward silence, Xingran spoke again, okay. I'll suppress my cultivation to match yours. However, Yuan shook his head and said, there's no need for you to do that. What? But that wouldn't be fair. Why not? Because I cannot use immortal qi? Xingran quietly nodded. The next moment, Yuan exuded his immortal qi, shocking Xingran and the spectators. He can use immortal qi even though he's only immortal. In the seventh heaven and above, all cultivators who have yet to break through immortal ascension and reach bronze immortal are considered mortals. Xingran could only stand there with a dumbfounded look on her face. Are you still going to underestimate me? I promise you that I am Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy for a reason, said Yuan, snapping Xingran out of her daze. In that case, let's spar without any restrictions. She muttered. Yuan nodded, that's more like it. By the way, I won't be using any techniques or weapons, he added. So you'll only be using your physique? I'll do that as well. Whenever you are ready, Yuan said calmly. After a brief moment of stillness, both sprang into action, moving almost at the same instant. Yuan, however, was a split second slower, having deliberately waited for Xingran to make the first move. Their bodies shrouded in immortal qi, Yuan and Xingran collided with explosive force, sending a powerful ripple surging through the arena. Fortunately, a protective formation surrounded the battlefield, containing the shockwave and preventing it from spilling into the surrounding area. A look of surprise appeared on Xingran's face when she noticed how powerful Yuan's physique was. I have never seen such a sturdy and powerful physique before. Can humans really achieve this level of physique as immortal? She cried inwardly. Xingran was a genius in her own right, hence why she was able to use immortal qi while only being at the peak of immortal ascension. However, when she compared herself to Yuan, she felt like an ordinary mortal who had no talents. As the battle wore on, the outcome became increasingly clear. Xingran was drenched in sweat, her breaths growing heavy and uneven, exhaustion evident in every movement. In stark contrast, Yuan stood calm and composed, without so much as a single drop of sweat marring his body. The Dragon Emperor watched with intense focus, not daring to miss even the slightest detail. His experience and prowess are far above what it appears. This is beyond the realm of geniuses. So he's a true reincarnator, huh? That explains everything. The Dragon Emperor finally pieced together the truth and understood the situation. Why you win? Xingran declared her own defeat as she fell to the ground in exhaustion. Although Xingran could wield immortal qi, doing so drained her energy and stamina at an alarming rate, especially under the relentless pressure from Yuan. As a result, the match lasted just over an hour before she was completely exhausted, unable to continue. It was a good match, said Yuan. Before Yuan could even step off the stage, another figure leapt onto it, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Senior envoy, she wasn't even enough to count as a warm-up, was she? He said with a grin. How about a match with me, Xingming? Yuan turned to look at the handsome young man standing before him. His cultivation had reached bronze immortal, and his body exuded an aura that was much stronger than Xingran's. Why not? Yuan said with a smile. Seeing this, Xingran quickly got off the stage so they could begin their fight. The moment Xingran stepped off the stage, Xingming lunged at Yuan with fierce momentum, his aura surging so violently that the very air around them trembled without end. Xingming had decided to go all out from the very beginning. Not wanting to disappoint him, Yuan activated his dragon transformation before clashing with him. He can use dragon transformation even though he's a human. Xingran and the other dragons were greatly shocked to see this. That must be Dragon Goddess Yu's powers. There's no doubt that he's her envoy. I knew you were holding back, but I didn't expect you to be hiding this much power, Xingming muttered through gritted teeth. He had intended to press the offensive, but the overwhelming pressure from Yuan made it impossible. Forced onto the defensive, Xingming could only hope to spot an opening amidst the relentless assault. However, his hopes never materialized. Within half an hour, Xingming was thoroughly defeated, unable to withstand Yuan's relentless pressure. I haven't experienced this level of defeat since I graduated from this place. Xingming sighed out loud as he lay on the ground. Just like Xingming, several more dragons jumped onto the stage. However, they weren't as powerful as Xingming. Yet, they still wanted to experience fighting with Yuan. I'll face all three of you at once. Whenever you're ready. Yuan beckoned them. Thank you for this opportunity, Senior Envoy. The young dragons bowed to him before attacking simultaneously from different directions. Although Yuan didn't deactivate his dragon transformation, he didn't go all out either, allowing the young dragons to fight a satisfying match. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, Yuan spent the rest of the day sparring with the young dragons in the training grounds. I am going to train here a little longer. You can leave without me, she merely said to them at the end of the day. Yuan nodded and continued ascending the dragon spiral mountain with the Dragon Emperor. Sorry that took so long. I only planned on a few matches. There's nothing to apologize for. I was even expecting it to take a few days. The young dragons enjoyed it. That's all that matters. Yuan looked at him and smiled. You know, a certain friend told me how the Dragon Emperors have a terrible personality. The Dragon Emperor burst out laughing at such unexpected remarks and said, well, your friend isn't wrong. Huh? Yuan looked at him with raised eyebrows. Chapter 1947, 7 Dragon Emperors. Chapter 1947, 7 Dragon Emperors. Don't look at me like that. I'm not talking about myself. The Dragon Emperor shook his head with a weak smile on his face. Since you've only recently arrived in the 7th heaven, you probably haven't heard of any rumors on the Dragon Emperors since they rarely get passed down to the lower heavens. There are only 7 Dragon Emperors across the entire 9 heavens, including myself, the Dragon Emperor said solemnly. Yet most of them are steeped in controversy. Take the Blood Dragon Emperor, for example. He is infamous for his uncontrollable bloodlust, going on murderous rampages every few years. Entire cities and bloodlines have been reduced to ruins beneath his wrath. Another example is the Poison Dragon Emperor, the Dragon Emperor continued. A master of venom and toxins, he shows no regard for anything around him when he unleashes his power. Every battlefield he touches is left tainted for centuries, poisoning the land, the waters, and all life nearby. Many innocent beings have perished because of his recklessness. Why do they behave like that? Hell, how did they even become Dragon Emperors? Yuan asked. How much do you know about Dragon Emperors? How they are chosen, for example? Yuan shook his head and said, I admit that I don't know much about Dragon Emperors since they weren't really a thing during the Immortal Monarch's era. I see. Then allow me to explain this system to you. There are 2 main requirements to becoming a Dragon Emperor, the Dragon Emperor explained. First, you must be born into one of the 10 recognized royal bloodlines. Second, even if you possess a royal bloodline, it must reach a certain threshold of purity. Without fulfilling these 2 requirements, one cannot ascend to the title of Dragon Emperor. There are many self-proclaimed Dragon Emperors out there, but only 7 of us are true Dragon Emperors. If someone is born meeting both conditions, they must still undergo the Dragon Emperor ceremony, where they are tested through a series of rigorous trials, the Dragon Emperor continued. However, that is not the final step. Even after passing the ceremony, they must receive the approval of at least 6 of the 10 recognized royal bloodlines, along with the endorsement of at least 2 current Dragon Emperors. If there are fewer than 4 Dragon Emperors in existence, one may ascend without needing their approval. However, there can never be more than 7 Dragon Emperors at any given time. If there are already 7 Dragon Emperors, anyone who meets all the prior requirements may challenge an existing Dragon Emperor to a death match, fighting for their title. Hearing this, Yuan asked, "Have you ever been challenged for your title before?" "I have only been challenged twice since I became a Dragon Emperor 120,000 years ago," the Dragon Emperor replied with a faint smile. After all, a dragon who meets all the qualifications is born only once every few thousand years, and they tend to challenge the weakest Dragon Emperor out there. Do Dragon Emperors face no consequences for their actions? What are the other dragon clans doing? Yuan then asked. The Dragon Emperor sighed and said, "Unfortunately, that's the reality we live in. Dragon Emperors aren't just powerful individuals, they have the full backing of their clans, along with the support of various other forces. Unless someone possesses overwhelming strength and an unshakable reputation, it's nearly impossible to challenge or hold a Dragon Emperor accountable. Even if someone qualifies to challenge them, it's rarely worth the risk, as such actions could easily ignite wars," the Dragon Emperor added with a heavy tone. "What about the Dragon Ancestor and the Great One? What are they doing now?" Yuan then asked about the dragons of origin. "The Great One is the very embodiment of aloofness and selfishness," the Dragon Emperor said. "He has no interest in the affairs of the Dragon Emperors, his only concern lies in expanding his personal collection of treasures. As for the Dragon Ancestor, he hasn't been seen for many thousands of years." "Is that so? I guess he'll do something about it." The Dragon Emperor looked at Yuan with wide eyes, but he didn't object. After all, Yuan was the immortal monarch, and he had Dragon Goddess Yu's backing. If anyone could deal with the Dragon Emperors, it would be Yuan. Unfortunately, Yuan lacked the capabilities to deal with the Dragon Emperors at this moment, so he had to wait until he did. Some time later, they arrived at the area situated just above the training grounds, where a single large building stood. It served a singular purpose, used exclusively by the higher-ups of the Holy Dragon clan for important meetings and discussions. Since there was nothing of importance inside, they simply walked past the building and continued their ascent toward the mountain's peak. Eventually, they arrived at the summit, where an elevated circular platform stood, resembling a grand stage. In front of it stood a stone tablet, distinguished by a uniquely shaped hole carved through its center. "Is this?" The Dragon Emperor nodded and confirmed Yuan's suspicions. "Yes, this is the teleportation device. Although it's capable of extremely long-distance teleportation, it's limited to the other dragon's spiral mountain. But alas, the key used to operate it is currently in the Azure Dragon clan's possession." "Speaking of the Azure Dragon clan, could you tell me more about them?" Yuan asked. "I'd like to better understand their situation before I confront them." The Dragon Emperor nodded and replied, "Of course. The Azure Dragon clan once lived peacefully, hidden away in the Sea of Dragons. For countless years, they remained secluded, causing no conflict. However, for reasons unknown, they began making aggressive moves toward our Dragon Spiral Mountain a few thousand years ago, trying to appease the Great One. We tried asking for an explanation, but they refused to reveal anything. It's likely the Great One has something to do with it, but it's not like we can confront him. The Great One has a short temper and is easily offended, after all." Chapter 1948, Frozen Palace. Chapter 1948, Frozen Palace, the Great One, huh? Do you know his location? Yuan asked. The Dragon Emperor shook his head and said, "The number of individuals who may know his location can be counted on one hand. He loves traveling the 9 heavens in search for treasures and can be anywhere. When he's not traveling, he's most likely hidden within his own realm or slumbering somewhere in the starry sky." "I see. Anyway, going back to the Azure Dragon clan. They are one of the 10 recognized royal bloodlines, but they are ranked last in terms of prowess and influence." After a slight pause, he added, "In case you are wondering, the Holy Dragon clan is ranked 6th. Their bloodline grants them complete mastery over water, so they established their main dwelling deep on the floor of the Sea of Dragons." The Dragon Emperor continued to talk about the Azure Dragon clan. Sometime later, Yuan said, "I have a good understanding of the Azure Dragon clan, somewhat. Until I meet and speak with them personally, I can't say I know them. Anyway, it'll take some time before they respond to our offer, right?" That's correct, the Dragon Emperor replied. The fastest we've ever received a response was 5 weeks, and the longest took nearly 7 months. Their timing is unpredictable. I'd like to train in the meantime, Yuan said. Does the Dragon Spiral Mountain have any unique training grounds? Specifically, something related to the Yin attribute. I'm working on strengthening my cold immunity. The Dragon Emperor nodded and replied, of course. We have special training grounds for those who have graduated from their initial training, what you experienced earlier. The Dragon Emperor led Yuan back down the mountain, retracing their steps until they returned to the training grounds. However, instead of stopping at the familiar arenas, where Shi Meili was still engaged in spirited sparring with the young dragons, they continued deeper, heading toward a more secluded area. When they reached their destination, Yuan found himself standing before 5 towering pagodas, each emanating a distinct and ancient aura. After taking a moment to admire their imposing beauty, Yuan shifted his gaze to the large signs hanging above each entrance. 4 levels of Inferno, Frozen Palace, Endless Tribulations, Venomous Altar, and the Unyielding Playground, huh? Yuan mumbled the names written on each sign with intrigue. The Dragon Emperor began introducing each pagoda in detail. Each of these pagodas contains a realm of its own, far more vast than their appearance suggests. This one is the 4 levels of Inferno. It is designed to temper one's resistance to fire, with 4 ascending levels of difficulty. You can challenge a higher floor as your endurance improves. He continued, the first level is intended for beginners with no fire resistance. The second is suited for those with weak fire resistance. The third is for those with powerful fire resistance. As for the 4th level, it should only be attempted by those who possess super fire resistance. Anything less would be courting death. The Frozen Palace follows the same structure, the Dragon Emperor continued, but it's designed to train one's resistance to cold, which should suit your needs. He gestured to the next pagoda. The Endless Tribulation is for tempering one's body against lightning. Then to another, the Venomous Altar sharpens one's resistance to poison. Finally, he pointed to the last pagoda, and last but not least, the Unyielding Playground, where gravity is greatly intensified to strengthen one's raw physique and endurance. After learning about the 5 pagodas, Yuan asked, so the Frozen Palace only trains one's cold resistance to supreme cold resistance? Actually, the Frozen Palace has 5 levels, so you can train your cold resistance past supreme cold resistance. The Unyielding Playground has the most levels since we prefer training our raw physique, the Dragon Emperor clarified. Yuan nodded, alright, they'll be training on the 5th level within the Frozen Palace. By the way, do you have a way to contact me when the Azure Dragon clan responds? Don't worry, they'll personally come get you when they respond. I understand. Have fun. Without any delay, Yuan stepped into the pagoda dedicated to cold resistance training. The moment he crossed the threshold, his surroundings shifted. He found himself standing in a vast, snowy expanse, where icy winds howled across an endless frozen plain. Far in the distance, towering against the pale horizon, stood a massive castle sculpted entirely from shimmering ice, its presence both majestic and foreboding. Since he already had supreme cold resistance, Yuan didn't feel any discomfort, but it was clear that the training had yet to truly begin. Without hesitation, Yuan began making his way toward the ice palace. Even before reaching the gates, Yuan could see a figure sitting in front of the entrance. When Yuan got near, this figure opened his eyes and spoke, "Since this is your first time here, allow me to give you a brief introduction. There are 5 floors in the Frozen Palace. You can increase the difficulty of your training by heading to the next floor. On each floor, you will not only have to endure the cold, but you'll also have to fight enemies. If they hit you, your body becomes more prone to the cold. If you need to leave, just shout for help and I will come rescue you." Yuan nodded before asking, "Are you with the Holy Dragon clan?" The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "No, I am from the Glacial Dragon clan, the true owners of this realm. The Holy Dragon clan merely borrows this training ground from us." "I see." Yuan murmured thoughtfully. So the pagodas are actually teleportation devices. The Dragon Emperor had purposefully skipped this detail to surprise Yuan. "What are the rules?" Yuan then asked. There is only one rule here, the middle-aged man said firmly. You are strictly prohibited from disturbing others who are training on the same floor. Violate this, and you will be immediately expelled from the training ground, and banned from returning for 100 years. Yuan raised an eyebrow and muttered, there will be others? Chapter 1949, Frozen Palace, 2. Chapter 1949, Frozen Palace, 2. Of course, there will be others. This is a public training ground, after all, said the middle-aged man. That said, the majority of these individuals are from the dragon clans, so you won't be seeing many humans. I see. Understandable. Whenever you're ready to begin your training, simply pass through the gates behind me, the middle-aged man instructed. Yuan nodded and, without hesitation, stepped through the gates, arriving at the first floor of the training area. The moment he crossed over, the temperature plummeted far lower than it had been outside, as if he had stepped into the heart of a frozen world. Of course, since this floor was meant for beginners, it didn't affect Yuan, who had reached supreme cold resistance. Without lingering, Yuan made his way straight toward the staircase leading to the second floor. As he walked, he couldn't help but notice just how vast the floor truly was. The space seemed endless. Aside from the entrance wall behind him, the castle's outer walls were nowhere in sight, swallowed by the seemingly infinite expanse of snow and ice. Moreover, at a glance, there appeared to be several thousand individuals scattered across the vast expanse, each focused intently on their training. As the middle-aged man had mentioned, the overwhelming majority of them were dragons, and those who didn't belong to the dragon clans were mostly from other beast races. Suddenly, Yuan sensed a surge of killing intent hurtling toward him. Turning swiftly to face the threat, he spotted a knight clad in icy armor, its entire form sculpted from frost. The knight charged at him with relentless momentum, its sword raised high, gleaming coldly under the pale light. Without even bothering to draw his weapon, Yuan casually sidestepped the knight's sword and swung his fist. The moment his strike connected with the icy armor, the knight's entire body shattered into countless glittering fragments, scattering like snow in the air. After destroying the knight, Yuan noticed his cold resistance and spiritual energy increasing slightly. So they're not just an annoyance, huh? Eventually, Yuan reached the staircase leading to the next floor, only to find that it was actually a teleportation device designed to transport him directly upward. Upon arriving on the second floor, he immediately noticed the change. The number of individuals training had thinned considerably, with only a few hundred scattered across the vast frozen landscape. Moreover, the cultivators on the second floor were far stronger than those on the first. While the first floor was filled with individuals still in the spirit realm, the ones here had already stepped into the divine realm and beyond. Once again, Yuan immediately made his way to the next teleportation device. Some time later, Yuan arrived on the third floor, where the number of individuals training had been cut in half. On the third floor, the Ice Knights were not only more powerful than on the previous floors, but they also made more frequent appearances. By the time Yuan made it to the teleportation device to the fourth floor, he had to defeat 6 Ice Knights. On the fourth floor, the number of individuals had dwindled to fewer than 100. Most of them possessed cultivation levels around Immortal Ascension, and a few among them had already stepped into the Bronze Immortal realm. Eventually, Yuan arrived at the teleportation device to the 5th floor, and right beside the device was a warning that read, "Only those who have achieved supreme cold resistance should proceed to the 5th floor." After glancing at the warning, Yuan, without hesitation, entered the teleportation device and teleported to the 5th floor. The moment Yuan stepped onto the 5th floor, a bone-chilling cold that he hadn't been able to experience in the previous 4 floors immediately washed over him. For the first time, he didn't need to fight the Ice Knights to feel his cold resistance being tempered, and simply standing there was enough to push his body toward growth. The 5th floor was noticeably less spacious than the previous levels, its confined space concentrating the cold into a much smaller area. As a result, the frigid temperature bore down on everything with a far greater intensity. Moreover, a massive ice structure stood at the very center of the training room, its towering presence radiating an even deeper, more penetrating chill. As for the number of people training on the 5th floor, there were only 4, and 3 of them were female. Unsurprisingly, the vast majority of people training inside the frozen palace were females. When Yuan arrived on the 5th floor, none of the others spared him so much as a glance, each completely absorbed in their own training. Yuan wanted to start his training immediately, but he was somewhat disappointed by the training grounds. This place is only slightly better than Sun Ling Kai's painting, he sighed inwardly as he made his way to an empty spot and began his training. An hour into his training, Yuan had to deal with an incoming Ice Knight. The Ice Knight did not have a cultivation base, but its raw strength was comparable to someone at the peak of Immortal Ascension, and it was very skilled with its ice sword. However, Yuan was still able to completely destroy them with his bare fists. After defeating the Ice Knight, Yuan stood there with a pondering look on his face. What a second. That guard said if I get hit by these Ice Knights, my body becomes more prone to the cold. If I purposefully let myself get hit and weaken myself, would that increase the speed of my training? He had to test out his theory and waited for the next Ice Knight to appear with anticipation. An hour later, another Ice Knight appeared before Yuan. This time, instead of destroying it instantly, Yuan allowed it to land a strike on him. Chapter 1950, Glacial Traces. Chapter 1950, Glacial Traces. After being struck by the Ice Knight and being cursed with Glacial Trace, Yuan inspected his body. My body definitely feels colder now, but it's not enough. Since a single curse wasn't enough to see any difference, Yuan decided to let the Ice Knight strike him a few more times. Although Yuan took no real damage or injuries from the Ice Knight's attacks, a glowing blue chain-like tattoo would appear across his body with each strike, each mark representing a single glacial trace. After accumulating 10 glacial traces, Yuan finally sensed a change. His cold resistance had weakened to the point where the 5th floor's environment now felt genuinely threatening. However, in exchange, his cold resistance was strengthening at a noticeably faster rate than before. Naturally, Yuan wasn't the first individual to have considered this reckless action. However, he was definitely the first to weaken himself so much. The middle-aged man standing guard outside the palace had been watching Yuan out of curiosity and was dumbfounded by Yuan's actions. 10 glacial trace. His supreme cold resistance is now only as strong as super cold resistance. What a reckless human. Had seen impatient individuals purposefully receiving glacial traces to speed up their training before, but most of them only dared to receive 1 or 2 glacial traces. Even the most reckless individual to train at the Frozen Palace has only accepted 7 glacial traces. Yet, Yuan went ahead and purposefully received 10 glacial traces at once. However, that was only the beginning of the guard's shock, as Yuan decided to receive even more glacial traces, racking up 20 glacial traces in total. This is more like it. A smile tugged at Yuan's lips as he shattered the Ice Knight after accumulating 20 glacial traces. By now, his cold resistance had dropped to the level of powerful cold resistance, a full 2 stages lower than the recommended threshold for surviving on the 5th floor. Yet despite the overwhelming cold, his excitement only grew. The other 4 individuals training on the 5th floor finally turned their attention to Yuan, their faces filled with shock and disbelief as they realized what he had done to himself. Lowering his cold resistance to such a dangerous level in this environment was nothing short of madness, and yet he stood there, unyielding. Who is that? I've been training here for over 100 years, and this is my first time seeing him, one of them questioned out loud. He's a human, too. Whoever he is, he won't last long with that many glacial traces on him. It'll give him a few days at most before he is forced to leave or dies, one of them sneered. After showing brief interest in Yuan, the 4 individuals quickly returned to their own training. Hours turned into days. A week had passed since Yuan arrived on the 5th floor and started training his cold resistance. The others believed that he would only last a few days, but he persisted for an entire week and didn't appear to be giving up anytime soon. A month later, the middle-aged man who usually guarded the entrance unexpectedly appeared on the 5th floor, drawing puzzled looks from those training there. It was the first time any of them had seen him abandon his post. The middle-aged man approached Yuan after finding him. I have a message from the Holy Dragon Clan's Dragon Emperor, he said. The Azure Dragon clan has responded. They have agreed to meet you. It will happen in 3 months on a specific island. You can continue training here for another 2.5 months since it'll take us 2 weeks to arrive at the meeting place. That's the end of his message. Do you have anything to say to him? Yuan then said, tell him that I'll see him in 2 months. The middle-aged man silently nodded and left the next moment. He received a message from the Holy Dragon clan's Dragon Emperor. What's his relationship with the Dragon Emperor? His background must be quite extraordinary. The 4 individuals itched to approach Yuan and strike up a conversation, curiosity burning in their eyes. However, bound by the strict rules of the training ground, they didn't dare disturb him, knowing that even a simple word could be seen as interfering with his training. Even when they spoke aloud, it was little more than muttering to themselves, carefully avoiding direct conversation with one another to stay within the rules. Once the middle-aged man left, Yuan returned to his training. However, when the ice knight appeared half an hour later, Yuan allowed it to strike him, giving himself several more glacial traces. Heavens! He's at 30 traces now. Is he actually trying to kill himself? The others were in disbelief at Yuan's recklessness. Unbeknownst to them, Yuan would have died countless times already if it weren't for his regeneration ability and powerful physique. I need to achieve cold immunity before I meet the Azure Dragon clan. With that determination, Yuan increased his glacial traces until he reached 40. With 40 glacial traces suppressing his cold resistance, Yuan was essentially left without any defense against the cold, enduring a temperature intended for those with supreme cold resistance. Holy shit! How is he not dead? His cultivation is only at Divine Emperor, too. Look closely. His body is recovering as it is being frozen and shattered. I cannot imagine the pain he must be experiencing right now. What horrifying regenerative abilities. He must have some kind of godlike physique. Or maybe he consumed a miracle treasure before coming here. The 4 individuals training on the 5th floor were so shocked and unsettled by Yuan's reckless training that they found themselves unable to concentrate on their own. One by one, they abandoned their training, their full attention drawn irresistibly to Yuan instead. They all wanted to see his limit. Chapter 1951, Cold Immunity. Chapter 1951, Cold Immunity. An entire month has passed since Yuan accepted 40 glacial traces on his body. Although his training progress has sped up tremendously, Yuan could tell that he would still not be able to achieve cold immunity within what little time he had left. Thus, he decided to push himself further and accepted another 10 glacial traces, bringing his total to 50. His recklessness was so mind-boggling that it indirectly disturbed the others' training. There was simply no way they could focus on their own training when there was such a madman in their presence. With only 1 week remaining, Yuan suddenly began making his way toward the massive ice structure at the center of the floor, the very source of the coldest, most concentrated energy in the entire training ground. The others could only watch in silence, occasionally swallowing hard as tension gripped them. Each of them was a golden immortal, one even a true immortal, yet not a single one dared to approach the ice structure. Its oppressive cold was something even they instinctively feared. And yet, Yuan walked toward it without hesitation. He's actually approaching the Heaven Frost essence. That thing could instantly freeze an immortal even if they have cold immunity. There was a reason why everyone was training far away from the Heaven Frost essence. Yuan's cold resistance was improving at a tremendous rate, but his body was also experiencing unspeakable pain. His skin, blood, and even his bones were constantly freezing and shattering with every passing second. A few days later, a unique aura enveloped Yuan's figure the moment he achieved cold immunity. He's actually achieved cold immunity. As Yuan had anticipated, his harmonious heaven-refining immortal physique began to merge with his cold immunity. However, unlike his time in the primal expanse, the training ground here, despite its intensity, was ultimately too weak to yield any significant progress. Yuan turned his gaze toward the towering ice structure in front of him, the thought of taking a few bites out of it briefly crossing his mind as a way to accelerate his progress. But after a moment of consideration, he shook the idea away. This training ground didn't belong to him, nor even to the Holy Dragon clan. Claiming something so central to its design would be crossing a line he wasn't willing to step over. Looks like I will have to visit White Hell to complete its fusion, he sighed inwardly. Since had achieved his goals, Xuan decided to end his training there and began walking toward the teleportation device. Excuse me. Are you done with your training? One of the four immortals suddenly called out to Xuan. If Head finished his training, it wouldn't be against the rules to disturb him. Xuan halted his steps and turned to face the four immortals. Yes, I am done here. May I ask for your name? Bing Xian from the Glacial Dragon Clan. Xuan pondered for a moment whether he should use his real identity or a fake one. In the end, he spoke with a calm smile. My name is Xuan, and I'd like to thank the Glacial Dragon Clan for sharing this training ground. Bing Xian didn't know what else to say and could only watch as Xuan entered the teleportation device and disappeared from the 5th floor. Sometime later, Xuan left the Ice Palace. Noticing his presence, the middle-aged man could only shake his head and mumble, "You're a monster." Thank you. By the way, how do I leave this place? There is only one teleportation device. It'll take you back to the place you came from. All right. Sometime later, Xuan returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. The Holy Dragon Emperor was waiting for him in front of the pagoda when he returned and said, "How was your training?" "I have achieved one of my goals, but I am still far from reaching my final goal. Anyway, when will we head out to meet the Azure Dragon Clan?" "We can immediately leave." "Let's do it." "Very well." The Dragon Emperor suddenly took a deep breath before speaking in a loud voice that rippled throughout the Dragon Spiral Mountain. "We're leaving immediately." A few moments later, a massive flying treasure in the shape of a boat appeared in the sky. The Holy Dragon Clan had been preparing for their departure the moment they received the Azure Dragon Clan's response and was only waiting for Yuan's return. Without any delay, Xuan and the Dragon Emperor flew onto the flying treasure, where Shimeli and other Holy Dragon Clan members were waiting. Moreover, there was a small group of elite warriors, looking like they were prepared to go to war. "Welcome back, Xuan." Shimeli approached him with a smile on her face. Xuan smiled back and said, "Looks like you've been working hard these past few months." Shimeli's cultivation had not only soared to the peak of Divine Grandmaster, but her aura was also much sharper than before. The Holy Dragon Clan was generous enough to provide me with a personal instructor, and I have been training pretty much every day since then, she revealed. "I heard you've been training inside the Frozen Palace." "I plan on training at the Unyielding Playground once we return." "Senior, are we allowed to leave now?" asked the owner of the flying treasure. Xuan nodded, "Yes, we can leave now." Soon, the flying treasure began moving, flying with immense speed. "We're headed to the Dragon Assembly Hall. It's a building built on an unnamed island specifically for meetings between the Holy Dragon Clan and the Azure Dragon Clan," the Dragon Emperor explained as they traveled. Chapter 1952, Meeting the Azure Dragon Clan. Chapter 1952, Meeting the Azure Dragon Clan, Are they soldiers? Xuan asked, his gaze settling on the group of elite warriors stationed around the ship, standing like silent sentinels. "Yes," the Dragon Emperor replied. "We're not expecting a battle with the Azure Dragon Clan, but it's a precaution. They'll be doing the same on their end." "I see." Their journey to the Dragon Assembly Hall took just over a week, so they still had a few days to spare before their scheduled meeting with the Azure Dragon Clan. The Dragon Assembly Hall itself was an imposing dome-shaped structure, constructed at the heart of a barren, isolated island. Normally, sea beasts roamed these waters in abundance, but Xuan couldn't sense a single presence near the island. It was as if something on the island itself was repelling them. "Can I explore the place before the Azure Dragon Clan's arrival?" Shimeli asked. However, the Dragon Emperor shook his head and said, "Since this is a formal meeting, we can only enter the island on the scheduled date, even if we've arrived early." "Oh, okay." The Azure Dragon Clan didn't make an appearance until a day before the scheduled meeting. Unlike the Holy Dragon Clan, who traveled by air, the Azure Dragon Clan moved through the sea depths, emerging gracefully from the sea, as if the ocean itself parted to welcome them. So that's the Azure Dragon clan, huh? She merely murmured, her eyes scanning their features with quiet curiosity. Unlike the Holy Dragon clan, who bore black hair and golden eyes, the Azure Dragon clan stood out with their light blue hair, shimmering like the sea under sunlight, paired with the same striking golden eyes that marked their royal heritage. However, just like the Holy Dragon clan, they did not set foot on the island and merely camped out right outside it. Just as the Dragon Emperor predicted, the Azure Dragon clan also brought their own warriors. In fact, they brought thrice as many soldiers as the Holy Dragon clan. The next day, both the Azure Dragon clan and the Holy Dragon clan entered the island and made their way to the building. Neither attempted to speak with the other until they were inside the building. Once they were seated, the leader of the Azure Dragon clan, Zhao Zhenhai, spoke. "What's the meaning of this, Holy Dragon Emperor? Why did you bring a human to such an important meeting?" "Watch your mouth, Zhao Zhenhai. He's not your typical human." Yuan then spoke. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yuan, and I was the one who arranged our meeting today." "What? Yes, I am Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy." "Ha ha ha." Zhao Zhenhai suddenly burst out laughing. "Do you really expect me to believe that you, a human, are the dragon?" Before Zhao Zhenhai could even finish his sentence, Yuan activated his dragon transformation, unleashing a surge of aura that flooded the entire room with overwhelming pressure. The soldiers of the Azure Dragon clan reacted instantly. Sensing the sudden release of power, they instinctively shifted into combat stances, their bodies tensing as if bracing for a battle. Seeing this, the soldiers of the Holy Dragon clan also braced themselves. However, the tense atmosphere quickly calmed down when Yuan remained still. "So you can use dragon transformation. I fail to see how that proves you're Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy," Zhao Zhenhai sneered in disbelief. "It proves you know nothing about Dragon Goddess Yao." Someone from the Holy Dragon clan sneered. "What?" Zhao Zhenhai frowned at such provocative words. The Dragon Emperor smiled and elaborated. "Dragon Goddess Yao has the ability to grant abilities unique to dragons to other beast races, including humans. The fact that he can use dragon transformation is proof that he was blessed by Dragon Goddess Yao." Zhao Zhenhai narrowed his eyes and asked, "When did you become her envoy?" "As far as I am aware, Dragon Goddess Yao has not made any appearances since the Immortal Monarch's era." Yuan smiled and said, "Recently." "What?" Many from the Azure Dragon clan showed surprise, even shock, upon hearing this. "Are you implying that Dragon Goddess Yao has returned?" Zhao Zhenhai asked. Although he tried to hide it, his voice was still trembling slightly. "That's exactly what I am trying to say." "Bullshit. I have witnessed evidence of her return with my own eyes," said the Dragon Emperor. "Me too." Those who were there to witness Dragon Goddess Yu's appearance in the Dragon Spiral Mountain joined in. Zhao Zhenhai remained silent for a good moment before he finally responded. "Since the Holy Dragon clan vouches for him, I'll take your word for it. So, Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy, why did you organize this meeting?" "I'll get straight to the point. The key you took from the Holy Dragon clan. I need it." "You mean the key that our Azure Dragon clan won during a bet?" "I don't mind lending it to you, but it won't be free, even if you're Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy." "Of course, I don't intend to take it for free," Yuan said calmly. "What do you want in exchange?" "I want the Dragon Spiral Mountain." The room fell into a suffocating silence. The members of the Azure Dragon clan struggled to maintain their composure, faint smirks tugging at the corners of their lips and amusement flickering in their eyes. Meanwhile, the expressions of the Holy Dragon clan darkened, their brows furrowed deeply in barely restrained indignation. "Unfortunately, I do not own the Dragon Spiral Mountain, so I cannot give it to you. However, I can give you something else." "And what can you possibly give me that's worth more than the Dragon Spiral Mountain?" Zhao Zhenhai sneered in disdain. "The reason you want the Dragon Spiral Mountain is because you want the Great One's attention, right? Do you need something from him?" "Even if I do need something from the Great One, it's not something you can provide." Yuan smiled and said, "You're right. I may not be able to provide it, but Dragon Goddess Yao might. What? Jiao Zhenhai's expression stiffened. Chapter 1953, Azure Dragon Clan's Predicament. Chapter 1953, Azure Dragon Clan's Predicament. Yuan continued, his voice steady and firm. You may not know much about Dragon Goddess Yao, but surely, you should be aware that among the 3 dragons of origin, she stands as the strongest. Whatever the Great One can offer, there's little, if anything, that Dragon Goddess Yao cannot match or surpass. Jiao Zhenhai fell silent to ponder Yuan's words, and the rest of the Azure Dragon clan began exchanging glances with each other. Eventually, Jiao Zhenhai spoke, I am willing to negotiate, but I will only continue speaking if you, Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy, are alone. That means the rest of the Holy Dragon clan must leave. That's unreasonable. There's no way we could leave Senior Envoy alone with you bastards. The Dragon Emperor then spoke, his tone calm yet resolute. I must agree with the others. He holds as much importance to us as Dragon Goddess Yao herself. We cannot, in good conscience, allow him to be left in the hands of your Azure Dragon clan, especially after the aggression you've already shown. This matter pertains to information meant solely for the Azure Dragon clan, Jiao Zhenhai said firmly. It is not something to be shared with outsiders, especially the Holy Dragon clan. Holy Dragon Emperor pondered for a brief moment before responding, in that case, I alone will stay here with him. I may be with the Holy Dragon clan, but I have my own reputation to uphold as a Dragon Emperor. I can even make an oath if you're not satisfied. Jiao Zhenhai nodded and said, if it's just you, and you're willing to swear an oath you will keep it to yourself, I am willing to let you stay. The Dragon Emperor turned to glance at the members of the Holy Dragon clan behind him. Without a single word exchanged, they quietly took their leave, offering no complaints or objections. With the Dragon Emperor present, the strongest among them, they had no reason to doubt Yuan's safety. Once the Holy Dragon clan left, the Dragon Emperor solemnly swore an oath, binding himself to secrecy until death regarding anything discussed in the conversation that followed. Only after the oath was spoken did Jiao Zhenhai finally open his mouth to speak. I'll get straight to the point, Jiao Zhenhai said, his expression turning grave. Our clan's bloodline is cursed. With each passing generation, its purity diminishes. If this continues, the Azure Dragon clan will eventually fall beneath the threshold required to be recognized as a royal bloodline. To stop this decline, we need the assistance of the Great One. However, to even get his attention, we need something he's interested in, and that's the Dragon Spiral Mountain. How can you be so sure it's a curse that's causing your bloodline to decline? Dragon Emperor asked with a doubtful look on his face. Because that's what the bastard who did it to us said. Jiao Zhenhai shouted angrily as he slammed the desk. That bastard? Yuan raised an eyebrow. I don't know who or what he truly is, Jiao Zhenhai said, his voice low with lingering unease. He simply appeared before our headquarters one day and demanded our family heirloom. When we refused and attempted to drive him off, he warned us that he would curse our bloodline. That was many thousands of years ago. Since then, our lineage has steadily declined. At first, the changes were subtle, barely noticeable. But now, it's growing worse with each generation. I see. So this curse is the source of your problem, and if I get rid of it, you'll lend me the key? Yuan said. If you can solve our predicament, let alone lend you the key, well, give it to you. Yuan smiled and said, that's a promise. As for your curse, I have a simple solution that doesn't even require Dragon Goddess Yu's involvement. What? In response to the Azure Dragon clan's puzzled expressions, Yuan retrieved the sacred chalice of purification and explained, if you pour a few drops of your blood into this chalice, it'll get rid of your curse. That. What kind of treasure is that? Jiao Zhenhai asked, swallowing nervously as he felt the profound and unfamiliar aura radiating from the chalice. Even the Dragon Emperor's eyes narrowed with intrigue. The aura it emitted was unlike anything he had ever sensed, ancient, otherworldly, and utterly unique. No one present could recall encountering anything quite like it before. It belongs to Dragon Goddess Yao, Yuan explained briefly. Are you worried it might do something to you? Zhao Zhenhai hesitated, then shifted his gaze to the Dragon Emperor, seeking silent reassurance, as if needing his approval before proceeding. If anything happens to you, I'll offer you my life. The Dragon Emperor spoke without an ounce of hesitation in his voice. Zhao Zhenhai nodded and fed several drops of his blood to the chalice. Yuan and everyone in the room waited in tense silence, a mix of anticipation and unease hanging heavily in the air. However, nothing happened even after many moments, causing Yuan to raise an eyebrow. What's wrong? Zhao Zhenhai could no longer keep silent and questioned. Yuan inspected the chalice to ensure nothing was wrong with it before looking at Zhao Zhenhai and speaking with a serious face. You're not cursed. What? How is that possible? Zhao Zhenhai exclaimed in disbelief. You must be messing with me. What would I gain from lying to you? Yuan shook his head. This is a profound treasure that can remove even the strongest curses out there. The fact that it's not responding to your blood is simply because you are not cursed. Then how do you explain what's been happening to my clan's bloodline? Zhao Zhenhai roared, his voice trembling with frustration. Are you telling me my entire family has been wrong all this time? He refused to believe it was all just a misunderstanding. There had to be more behind the slow collapse of his lineage. Yuan shrugged and said, I have no way of knowing that unless I take a closer look for myself. How about I come to your place and investigate it further? Chapter 1954, Visiting the Azure Dragon Clan's Territory. Chapter 1954, Visiting the Azure Dragon Clan's Territory. Did I hear you correctly? You want to visit the Azure Dragon Clan's headquarters? Zhao Zhenhai asked with a deep frown. Yes, Yuan replied with a nod. And what exactly do you hope to accomplish? Zhao Zhenhai pressed. Our clan has lived there for tens of thousands of years. We've searched every corner, and nothing we've found has ever explained our situation or hinted at a solution. Who knows? I can't tell you until I see it for myself. Maybe you missed something. What do you have to lose, anyway? Zhao Zhenhai rubbed his eyes and sighed. Dragon Emperor, will you be joining him? I won't allow anyone else from the Holy Dragon clan to join. Holy Dragon Emperor nodded and said, naturally. Wherever he goes, I will follow. Since this involves the entire clan, I cannot make this decision myself. Let me return to my clan to speak with the others first. I will contact you within 2 months. Very well. The meeting ended shortly after with the Azure Dragon clan and the Holy Dragon clan returning to their own homes. So, what's happening? The Holy Dragon clan asked the Dragon Emperor as they rode their flying treasure back to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. I cannot go into details since I made an oath, but Senior Envoy and I will be making a trip to the Azure Dragon clan soon. What? You're heading directly to their headquarters? That's too reckless even for you, Your Majesty. It's fine. Even if they try to do something, I will take down at least half of their clan before I perish. Yuan shook his head and tried to reassure the others that it would be fine. The Azure Dragon clan is in a unique situation. I doubt they'll do anything to us. I don't know what's happening, but what if they're tricking you, Senior Envoy? What if it's an ambush? Yuan chuckled and said, do you really think we'll be going there alone? Have you forgotten who else is with me? They quickly came to a realization. That's right. You have Dragon Goddess Yao. Yuan nodded. Indeed. With Dragon Goddess Yao at our side, not even the Great One could do anything to us, he said. Hearing this, the Holy Dragon clan was no longer worried about their safety. If anything, they hoped the Azure Dragon clan would try something so they could be erased from existence by Dragon Goddess Yao. Once they returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain, she immediately returned to her training. As for Yuan, he also returned to the Frozen Palace to progress his physique, even if it was just a little. You're back? Why? The middle-aged man was puzzled by his return and said, didn't you already achieve cold immunity? It won't go any further than that even if you train for 1,000 years. I know. Without offering any explanation, Yuan entered the 5th floor. There's nobody here? Yuan had expected to see the 4 immortals who were training there during his last visit. With only 2 weeks having passed, they should still have been in the midst of their training. Unbeknownst to him, however, the 4 had been so shaken by Yuan's reckless training that they chose to take a break from their own cultivation some time later. Yuan seated himself beside the Heaven Frost essence. Despite his cold immunity, the presence of the ice crystal radiated an intense chill that was still bitterly cold, even for him. When the ice knight appeared an hour later, Yuan purposefully allowed it to attack him, quickly stacking up glacial traces again. This time, Yuan pushed himself directly to 50 glacial traces. However, even after an entire hour, his physique showed no signs of improvement. Curious, he attempted to push further, stacking additional glacial traces onto his body. Yet as he reached 60, he realized there was a limit to their effectiveness. Beyond 50, the additional traces had no noticeable impact. It felt no different than before. An entire week later, Yuan finally noticed some improvements to his physique, but it was incredibly minimal. After an entire week of relentless training, Yuan's progress had increased by only a single %. At this rate, it would take him nearly 2 full years to reach completion, but knowing the nature of his physique, he understood all too well. The closer he came to perfecting it, the slower and harder the progress would become. Realistically, no matter how much time he spent here, it was unlikely he would ever fully complete his physique in this place alone. Still, Yuan wanted to make the most of the opportunity. He devoted all his time to training on the 5th floor while awaiting a response from the Azure Dragon clan. A month and a half passed before the long-awaited message finally arrived. In that time, he had managed to increase his physique's progress by only another 3%. The Dragon Emperor has a message for you. Before the man could convey the Dragon Emperor's message, Yuan walked toward the teleportation device and said, "No need. I'll hear it from him personally." Sometime later, Yuan met up with the Dragon Emperor. The Azure Dragon clan has responded. They agreed to let us visit their territory, and they'll pick us up from this place in a month. Sounds good. With a month remaining before his visit to the Azure Dragon clan's territory, Yuan spent his days sparring with the young dragons at the training grounds. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and a month later, Zhao Zhenhai and a small group of elite guards showed up at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Yuan and the Dragon Emperor wasted no time and grouped up with them. "Before we depart, do you need any water-breathing pills?" Zhao Zhenhai asked, aware that humans couldn't breathe underwater. "I'll be fine as long as I cover myself with spiritual energy," said Yuan. Zhao Zhenhai raised an eyebrow and said, "What if you run out of spiritual energy? Don't underestimate the Sea of Dragons. It can be quite rough even for an immortal. Whatever. Even if you exhaust your spiritual energy, we have some water-breathing pills prepared for you, so you won't die from drowning. Thank you for your consideration." Yuan smiled. Chapter 1955, Underwater City. Chapter 1955, Underwater City. After forming an airtight barrier of spiritual energy around himself, functioning like a self-contained air tank, Yuan stepped forward and followed Zhao Zhenhai into the depths of the Sea of Dragons. The waters of the Sea of Dragons were remarkably clear, allowing Yuan to see his surroundings with ease, even without the aid of any special techniques or artifacts. Once they had descended deep enough into the sea, one of the soldiers accompanying Zhao Zhenhai suddenly shifted into his true form, a massive, blue-scaled dragon whose presence seemed to ripple through the surrounding waters with raw majesty and power. "Hop on," Zhao Zhenhai said to them as he stood on the dragon's back, treating it like a mount. Flying treasures that functioned underwater were rare and not as fast as they were in the sky, but for the Azure Dragon clan, such tools were unnecessary. Masters of the sea, they traversed the waters with ease, relying on their natural prowess rather than external aid. "We will arrive at our destination in a month," said Zhao Zhenhai. "A month? Your base isn't as far as I expected," Yuan remarked. Zhao Zhenhai laughed at Yuan's remark and said, "It only takes a month because we're taking a shortcut. If we travel normally, it'd take several years to reach our place. By shortcut, do you mean the underwater currents? A few of those and a natural teleporter. Just as the primal expanse possessed natural teleporters, so too did the 9 heavens, though most of them were hidden deep beneath the sea. As for the underwater currents, they functioned like one-way tunnels, allowing anything within them to travel at incredible speeds with minimal effort. A few days later, they reached their first underwater current. The moment the dragon entered it, a powerful force surged around them, and their speed increased several-fold, propelling them through the depths like an arrow loosed from a bow. However, these water currents are not without drawbacks. One of the drawbacks to these underwater currents was their sheer intensity. Some were so powerful that they could tear a body apart if one wasn't strong enough to withstand the force. It's been a while since I entered one of these. Yuan thought to himself as he reminisced about the previous times had traveled underwater as Tian-E, the Immortal Monarch. The Azure Dragon clan wasn't the only one to call the ocean depths their home. Countless species and races had carved out their own domains beneath the waves. While the underwater world wasn't nearly as densely populated as the lands above, it was far from empty, filled with a wide variety of beings who had adapted to life in the vast, mysterious deep. When he was still living as the Immortal Monarch, had even visited cities that were entirely built underwater. After spending several days riding the current, they finally reached its end. However, it wasn't long before they came across another one just a few hours later, and without hesitation, they entered and let it carry them onward through the depths once more. As for Yuan's barrier, it was under constant assault from the powerful currents. If not for his physique that constantly replenished his spiritual energy and experience, maintaining it would have been impossible for someone at his cultivation level. Half a month later, they arrived at their first natural teleporter, which existed in a suspicious-looking fissure at the sea floor. Throughout their journey, Yuan encountered many unique sea beasts, some bearing a striking resemblance to dragons, although lacking the distinct, commanding aura that true dragons possessed. Yet despite their size or appearance, these creatures would always steer clear once they sensed the group's presence, instinctively avoiding the path of the Azure Dragon clan. Hell, Yuan even came across a few flying leviathans, but like the rest of the sea beasts, they veered away the moment they sensed the group's presence. After passing through the deep fissure, Yuan's group emerged into an entirely different region of the sea. The terrain had shifted so drastically that without thousands of years of experience living in these waters, it would be nearly impossible to navigate or know where to go next. After passing through several more currents and one final natural teleporter, Yuan and his group finally arrived at the Azure Dragon clan's territory. Nestled deep within the tranquil blue of the sea, the territory resembled a small, self-contained city, its structures crafted from a combination of gleaming coral, crystal, and flowing stone that shimmered with life and energy. Towering spires curved like sea serpents, and wide pavilions were anchored to the seabed by living roots that pulsed faintly with energy. Glowing flora swayed with the tides, illuminating the surroundings with a gentle bioluminescence. At the same time, aquatic beasts native to the region glided peacefully between structures, coexisting in harmony with the Azure Dragons. Despite being underwater, the city exuded a quiet, regal grandeur, an ancient calm that reflected the pride and heritage of the Azure Dragon clan. Unlike the Holy Dragon clan, which remained largely self-contained within the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, the Azure Dragon clan operated more like a traditional royal house, complete with its own city, infrastructure, and citizens. They didn't just command a bloodline, they ruled a domain. As for the inhabitants of the Azure Dragon clan's territory, they weren't limited to dragons alone. A diverse array of sea races could be seen moving through the city, most of them bearing the human form. Just like most land-dwelling beasts, sea beasts had adopted human forms for convenience, making interaction, movement, and daily life far easier within a structured society. As Yuan's group passed over the city from above, the scene below shifted. Everyone, regardless of race or status, paused what they were doing and looked up. With reverent expressions, they offered respectful bows or gestures, honoring the presence of the Azure Dragon clan. "Is this your first time seeing an underwater city?" Jiao Zhenhai suddenly asked Yuan. He shook his head and responded with a slight smile, "No, but it's definitely been a while since I've visited one." Chapter 1956 Azure Dragon Clan's 3 Elders. Chapter 1956 Azure Dragon Clan's 3 Elders. After passing through the underwater city, Yuan's group continued their journey for several more hours, gliding deeper into the heart of the Azure Dragon Clan's domain. Eventually, they arrived at their destination, a massive underwater courtyard residence that stretched across several miles of seafloor. Its grand architecture blended seamlessly with the surrounding ocean, featuring sweeping halls made of reinforced coral, shimmering crystal pillars, and roofs shaped like flowing waves. The entire structure radiated an aura of nobility and ancient power, befitting the status of a royal dragon clan. Yuan's group landed right at the entrance, where a group of individuals from the Azure Dragon Clan stood in orderly formation, awaiting their arrival. The Azure Dragon Clan welcomes the envoy of Dragon Goddess Biyao and the Holy Dragon Emperor to our humble domain. Thank you for having us, Yuan said politely as he leapt down from the dragon's back, landing lightly on the sea floor. Let's head inside first, Zhao Zhenhai added, gesturing toward the grand entrance as he began walking ahead. Once inside, Zhao Zhenhai led them through a series of ornate halls before guiding them into a spacious chamber where 3 more individuals awaited. Unlike those outside, these figures radiated a far greater presence, each one exuding a level of cultivation and authority that rivaled the upper echelons of the Holy Dragon Clan's command. Their gazes were sharp, their auras refined. Let me give you a brief introduction. They are the 3 Grand Elders. Their position and authority within the Azure Dragon Clan is only below mine and our ancestor. I'm the first Elder, Jiao Wenyan. Second Elder, Jiao Yansheng. Third Elder, Jiao Hanshen. I'm Yuan, envoy of Dragon Goddess Biyao. We've heard everything from the clan leader. You claim we've not been cursed, is that correct? Said the second elder. Yuan nodded and said, if you don't believe me, you can give it a try as well. He retrieved the sacred chalice of purification and gestured at them. Don't worry, we'll definitely do so. However, we won't be the ones doing it. Instead, it'll be someone who is, without a shadow of doubt, cursed, said the first elder as he made a gesture with his hand. The next moment, a middle-aged man entered the room, his wrists bound in thick chains like a prisoner, and his complexion pale as moonlight, as though drained by time or torment. The third elder explained, we've placed a powerful curse on him right before your arrival, so we know he's definitely cursed. If you're able to remove that curse with your treasure, we'll believe your claims. Yuan nodded and said to the man, feed this chalice several drops of your blood. The man gave a faint nod and followed the instructions with slow, weakened movements. Once the man offered his blood to the chalice, Zhao Zhenhai and the 3 elders observed in solemn silence, their expressions tense and unreadable. Moments later, the 2 dragons etched into the chalice stirred to life, gliding around its surface in fluid motion, as though awakened by the blood itself. They circled the chalice with growing excitement, their movements swift and vibrant, reacting to something within the offering. Now drink this. Yuan gathered the liquid from the chalice with his spiritual energy and hovered it above the man, who opened his mouth and drank it without question. Before long, a visible change came over the sickly man. Color began to return to his pale complexion, and the weakness in his limbs slowly faded. His breathing steadied, his posture straightened, and a faint glow returned to his eyes. Zhao Zhenhai and the 3 elders stared in astonishment, their solemn expressions giving way to surprise and wonder as they witnessed the transformation before them. After a brief moment of stillness, the 3rd elder suddenly sprang into action and began inspecting the man. It's real. His curse has been lifted, he revealed in a trembling voice. What? But Wed placed a supreme curse on him. How could it be removed with such ease? Exclaimed the first elder, his voice filled with disbelief. Satisfied? Yuan asked them. Just a second. We still need to use the treasure on us to confirm that we're not cursed, said the second elder. Yuan offered no objection to their request and began testing their blood one by one. However, by the end of it all, the chalice remained completely still, showing no reaction to any of them. How do we know that you're not controlling the treasure so that it only works with your permission? The 3rd elder suddenly questioned. Yuan shrugged and said, that's impossible to prove, so you'll just have to believe me. You're overestimating yourselves a little too much. The envoy has no reason to harm your Azure Dragon clan, the Dragon Emperor suddenly spoke in a somewhat disdainful tone. That's, I just want the key you took from the Holy Dragon clan. If I wanted to harm the Azure Dragon clan, I would have taken it by force, said Xuan. And we would have helped him. The Dragon Emperor added with a smile. Alright, we get it. Zhao Zhenhai sighed as he rubbed his eyes. Well, trust you. What are you going to do now? Well, I've been thinking about it for the past month, but there's really nothing I can say or do until I take a look around the place. In that case, we'll show you around our territory. Sure thing. I have something to do, so I'll assign some guards to be with you. It's not that I don't trust you, but it'll make traversing our territory much more convenient, said Zhao Zhenhai. I understand. Then please wait here for a moment. Zhao Zhenhai and the three Grand Elders left Xuan and the Dragon Emperor alone inside the room while they gathered a small group of guards. About half an hour later, two guards arrived at their room, a young man and a young woman, both golden immortal cultivators. My name is Xianbing, said the young man. Binglan, and well be your guide, said the young woman. Yuan. Let's get along. Chapter 1957, Investigation. Chapter 1957, Investigation. Where would you like to visit first, envoy of Dragon Goddess Yao? Xianbing asked. That's too long. Just call me Yuan. Then, Senior Yuan, where would you like to go? Yuan pondered for a moment before speaking. Let's take a look around this place first since we're already here. Very well. Rather than searching within the Azure Dragon clan's residence, Yuan chose to explore the area surrounding their living quarters. Xianbing and Binglan followed quietly a short distance behind Yuan. While their presence served as a protective escort, it was clear they were also there to keep a close eye on him, ensuring he didn't do anything deemed suspicious. The area surrounding the Azure Dragon clan's residence was vast and open, teeming with vibrant marine life. Colorful corals sprawled across the seafloor alongside smooth stones and swaying seaweeds, creating a natural tapestry rich with motion and life. Does the Azure Dragon clan use this space for anything? Yuan asked. Not that I am aware of. However, they do keep this place organized, treating it like an outdoor garden, said Binglan. No wonder it looks so beautiful, Yuan said as he swept the entire area with his divine sense. However, he was unable to find anything out of the ordinary. I don't see anything here. Let's check out the city. Some time later, Yuan made his way back to the city they had passed through not long ago. This place is even more magnificent from up close. The underwater city bore a striking resemblance to those on land, complete with bustling businesses, residential buildings, and streets paved with smooth sea stone. Even food stalls lined the pathways, their colorful banners swaying gently in the currents, offering all manner of underwater delicacies to passers-by. Yuan approached one of the nearby stalls with quiet intrigue. On land, such stalls typically sold skewers, steamed buns, or sizzling grilled dishes. But here, beneath the sea, every vendor offered only raw seafood and vegetables. It wasn't surprising, of course. In a place where fire was useless, raw delicacies were the norm. How much for that one? Yuan asked, pointing to a piece of seafood neatly wrapped in what looked like blue seaweed. 2 ordinary shells, said the vendor. Yuan raised his eyebrows at this unfamiliar currency. We have our own currencies down here, said Xianbing. Allow me to pay for you. Xianbing produced 2 beautiful and identical shell-like objects and handed them to the vendor, who immediately accepted them before handing Yuan his food. As soon as it was in his hand, Yuan took a bite. The texture was smooth and delicately soft, almost melting on his tongue. A strong, briny flavor filled his mouth, a rich, oceanic taste that was clean and refreshing, the kind only found in the freshest, highest quality fish. The blue seaweed used to wrap the seafood offered a pleasant contrast, slightly tougher in texture, but with a satisfying crunch that complemented the softness of the filling. What kind of food is this? Yuan asked the vendor. That is flying leviathan meat wrapped with spiritual seaweed. What? Surprise and bewilderment flashed across Yuan's face the moment he learned the identity of what had just eaten. Flying leviathans were known as the king of the seas by mortals, especially back in the primordial era. And yet, here they were, reduced to affordable stall food, casually served and consumed as though they were no more special than common fish. Is there something wrong with the food? The vendor asked with a worried look on his face, clearly afraid to offend someone being escorted by 2 soldiers from the Azure Dragon clan. Oh, there's nothing wrong. The food was delicious. Thank you. Yuan continued to wander through the city, his expression calm and almost leisurely, like that of a curious traveler taking in the sights. But beneath that relaxed exterior, he remained vigilant. His divine sense was constantly at work, quietly sweeping through the surroundings as he diligently inspected every corner for anything unusual. Due to the city's immense scale, it took Yuan nearly 2 full weeks to explore it in its entirety. He left no alley, district, or passage unchecked, his divine sense meticulously combing through every layer of coral, stone, and structure. Yet, despite his thorough search, he found nothing out of the ordinary. Anything? Binglan asked him. Yuan shook his head. Not surprising. The Azure Dragon clan has already searched through the city, several times, at that. Yuan then said, You said the Azure Dragon clan fought with the individual who cursed your clan, right? Yes, that's right. Where did the fight take place? Can you take me there? What's the point? The fight occurred many thousands of years ago. I doubt there are anything left from that event. We won't know until we see it for ourselves. Xianbing and Binglan exchanged glances with each other. Eventually, Xianbing said, All right, we'll take you there. The group made their way back toward the Azure Dragon clan's residence, but instead of stopping, they continued past it. After traveling several hundred miles through the serene, light-dappled waters, Xianbing and Binglan came to a halt before a strange and desolate field. The area stretched wide and eerie, marked by hundreds of deep, irregular craters etched into the seabed, each one like a scar carved into the ocean floor. The battle took place here, Xianbing said solemnly. Though the Azure Dragon clan fought against a single individual, that person held their ground for an entire month against all of us. And in the end, they still managed to escape with their life. Yuan didn't respond. He simply stood there, eyes fixed on the cratered landscape, a faint frown settling on his face. Do you see something? The Dragon Emperor asked, noticing Yuan's expression. His voice was calm but curious, he himself couldn't sense anything unusual. Yes. He nodded. What is it? What do you see? Binglan asked, her voice filled with urgency and excitement. It's poison. This place is filled with poison, he revealed. Chapter 1958, Unknown Poison. Chapter 1958, Unknown Poison, Poison? Binglan suddenly burst out, her voice sharp with disbelief. Are you saying poison is what caused the decline of our Azure Dragon clan's bloodline? That's outrageous. Her eyes flared with fury as she stepped forward. I've tolerated this farce only because it was my father's wish, but I can no longer endure it. You're nothing but a fraud. Elder sister, please, calm down, Xianbing said softly, stepping in with a concerned expression, trying to ease the rising tension. Yuan looked at her with raised eyebrows. Father? You're the clan leader's daughter? That's right. My full name is Jiao Binglan, and I am the eldest daughter in the Azure Dragon clan. Xianbing sighed and spoke next, Jiao Xianbing, the second eldest son. Also, this isn't our real appearance. Now that their identities had been exposed, there was no longer any need for concealment. In the next moment, they shed their disguises, revealing their real appearances. Senior Envoy, are you sure it's poison? I don't mean to doubt you, but I also cannot sense anything, said Dragon Emperor with a doubtful look on his face. I'm certain. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you what kind of poison it is. Why are you so certain? Jiao Xianbing asked. Yuan looked at him and said without any hesitation, because I have perfect poison immunity, and it reacted the moment I entered this place. Perfect poison immunity? Jiao Binglan exclaimed, her voice rising with disbelief. Isn't that the highest level of poison resistance, one that only exists in legends? And you expect us to believe you, a human, have actually acquired such an ability? Yuan gave a light shrug. Whether you believe me or not is your choice. And for the record, there's no definitive proof yet that this poison is tied to your clan's predicament. It's just a possibility. After learning about the poison, Yuan and the others hurried back to inform Zhao Zhenhai and the 3 Grand Elders about the discovery. Poison? Are you sure? Unsurprisingly, Zhao Zhenhai and the 3 Grand Elders met the news with skepticism. Doubt flickered across their faces, their expressions tightening as they struggled to accept such an improbable explanation. I've never heard of a poison capable of weakening a royal bloodline, said the first elder. As the Azure Dragon clan's foremost poison expert, his skepticism carried weight. We've examined our bodies and blood thoroughly in the past, but there were no traces of any poison. This might be something entirely new, Yuan replied. A poison specifically designed to target your bloodline without leaving behind the usual signs. You can't be serious. Do you even know what it would take to create something like that? And why would they target our Azure Dragon clan? We've always lived here in peace without offending anyone. Jiao Binglan exclaimed. You said he came here for your family heirloom, right? Do you think I can take a look at it? Yuan asked. That must be your true purpose here. Jiao Binglan snapped, her eyes blazing with fury. Are you working for that bastard? Without hesitation, she withdrew her weapon and leveled it at Yuan, her killing intent sharp and immediate. But before she could take another step, the Dragon Emperor moved. In an instant, he stepped between them, and the room was flooded with his overwhelming pressure, so heavy it made the walls groan and the very water around them tremble. Stop! Zhao Zhenhai roared. Binglan, what are you doing? Lower your weapon right this instant and apologize to our guest. But, she trembled with hesitation. I will not repeat myself. Zhao Binglan gritted her teeth in frustration as she lowered her weapon before putting it away. I apologize for her unruly behavior. Zhao Zhenhai said with a weary sigh. This is a deeply sensitive matter for our clan, and emotions are running high. I ask for your patience and understanding. Yuan shook his head lightly. It's fine. I understand how you feel. I don't expect you to place your trust in me so easily, either. He paused for a moment before continuing. How about this? Let me return to that area and investigate further. The poison doesn't affect me, so I'm in no danger. Honestly, we can only enter that area up to a certain point before we're forced to retreat, Zhao Zhenhai admitted. The deeper we go, the more nauseating it becomes, and if we push any further, we eventually lose consciousness, regardless of our cultivation. Why didn't you tell me that before I wasted 2 weeks wandering the city? Yuan sighed. Zhao Zhenhai fell silent. He didn't have any excuses for this blunder. Yuan turned to look at the Dragon Emperor and said, should do this alone. I don't want you to become poisoned. There's a good chance that I am already affected by it. Yes, but I believe it's unlikely, Yuan replied. The poison may be unique and potent, but it seems to act very slowly. If it were truly aggressive, the Azure Dragon clan's bloodline would have begun deteriorating much earlier. More likely, it's a poison that requires prolonged exposure, something that seeps in gradually over time before it begins to take effect. In that case, I'll listen to your advice and stay here for now. Allow me to accompany you, said the first elder, stepping forward. I possess the most extensive knowledge of poisons among us. Yuan considered mentioning that the first elder likely wouldn't be of much help, given that even he couldn't detect the poison. But he held his tongue and simply gave a quiet nod, choosing not to worsen his relationship with them. Sometime later, Yuan and the first elder made their way to the poisoned area. My poison immunity starts reacting from this point, Yuan said. The first elder didn't respond. Instead, he calmly retrieved a set of tools from his spatial ring, treasures designed for detecting poison. He activated them and tested the surrounding water. After a few moments, he shook his head and said grimly, "Nothing." Yuan then said, "It'll be going deeper. I suggest you stay here." "No, I'm coming with you." "Do as you please." Chapter 1959, Source of the Poison. Chapter 1959, Source of the Poison. As Yuan ventured deeper, the waters around him grew increasingly murky and dim. The clarity faded into a thick, shadowy haze, and a foul stench began to fill the area, seeping through even the protective barrier around him. It was the pungent, unmistakable smell of decay, as if he were swimming through water steeped in rot and corruption. Heavens! It was nothing like this when we visited this place for the last time 100 years ago. The first elder remarked with a disgusted expression on his face, even pinching his nose, trying to fight off the pungent smell. "The last time you visited this place was 100 years ago?" Yuan asked to confirm. "Yes. Since nobody can venture into this place without fainting, we eventually gave up on exploring this place. We even had people from outside the Azure Dragon clan attempt it, but the results remained the same. Of course, nobody could explain the phenomenon either. By the way, I am starting to feel my consciousness slipping away, so this is the furthest I can go. Good luck." The first elder halted his movements for a second before turning around and walking back to the Azure Dragon clan's residence. "I'll see you back at the house," said Yuan before he continued walking even deeper, his perfect poison immunity blocking the effects of the poison every second. Soon, the waters became so dirty that it was nearly impossible to see anything with his bare eyes, and even his divine sense was of little help. Since divine sense no longer worked, Yuan had to use divine gaze, which consumed more spiritual and mental energy, but that wasn't a problem for him. After wandering for days, Yuan eventually noticed something and hurried his pace. A few moments later, Yuan came upon a massive corpse resting on the seafloor, its presence dark and unsettling. The remains appeared to belong to some sort of serpent-like creature, but its body was so deformed and ravaged that its original identity was nearly impossible to discern. Twisted flesh, torn scales, and warped bones made it a grotesque shadow of whatever it once was. At the center of the corpse, nestled deep within its mangled remains, Yuan spotted a large black orb, its surface so dark and smooth that it nearly vanished into the surrounding murky water. It pulsed faintly, as if absorbing the decay around it, and gave off a presence that felt both unnatural and deeply ominous. It didn't take even a second before Yuan determined this black orb to be the source of the poison. He carefully picked it up and inspected it. The poison from it wasn't as deadly as the poisons had encountered in the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp, but it had a really unique property. If he had to compare it to the poison within the swamp, it'd be somewhere in the inner zones. This must be a new type of poison, specifically created to mess with the Azure Dragon clan's bloodline. Whoever created this is incredibly skilled. Now that Yuan had acquired the source of the poison, he had to deal with it. Fortunately, he had perfect poison immunity and the Harmonious heaven refining Immortal Physique, which allowed him to absorb and refine the poison. Although he wanted to bring the poison back to the Azure Dragon clan to show the clan leader and the three great elders as proof, had only endangered their lives. With no other option, Yuan sat down and began to absorb the poison, refining it into his own power. There's a lot of poison in this thing, likely built up for tens of thousands of years. It'll take some time before I fully purify it. As Yuan began purifying the poisonous orb, a faint glow surrounded his body, spreading out like ripples through the murky water. At the same time, he drew in the lingering poison around him, steadily absorbing and neutralizing its corruptive essence. Bit by bit, the oppressive darkness faded, and the once foul water began to clear. Time flowed quietly, and after several days of tireless effort, Yuan was nearly halfway through purifying the poison. But just as he continued his work, a sudden surge of killing intent flared from behind him. Instinctively, he halted, his body tensing as he turned to face the threat. Whoosh! A sharp, needle-like object tore through the water with blinding speed, aimed straight at Yuan. He reacted instantly, raising his arm to intercept it, but the weapon was shrouded in powerful immortal chi, disrupting his defense and slipping past his guard. It struck his body with a jarring force, but thanks to his powerful physique, it failed to pierce through completely. Had he been any weaker, the needle would have bored into his heart. Even so, it still wouldn't have been enough to kill him. What is the meaning of this? Yuan spoke to the approaching figure. A few moments later, a familiar-looking old man appeared before him. First Elder. The one who had attacked him was none other than the First Elder. So it was true that you have perfect poison immunity. What a pity. You could have had an easy death if you didn't. Although his poisoned attack had failed to kill Yuan, the First Elder showed no sign of concern. His expression remained calm, almost indifferent. After all, Yuan was merely at the peak of the Divine Emperor realm, while he himself stood at the second level of the God Ascension realm. From his perspective, the outcome was already decided. Before you kill me, how about giving me an explanation? Yuan said calmly, his gaze steady. Why are you doing this? Why? The First Elder sneered, his eyes narrowing. It's simple. You're interfering with our great project, something that's taken thousands of years of planning and a fortune in resources. We won't let one outsider ruin it all. That doesn't really explain anything. What's the plan? Who are you working for? Yuan continued to question the First Elder, trying to acquire as much information as he could. Chapter 1960, Fighting the First Elder. Chapter 1960, Fighting the First Elder. Why do you even care about such things when you're about to die? The First Elder sneered. You should be worrying about your own life. Yuan shrugged and replied, why bother worrying about something that's out of my control? You're a God Ascension realm cultivator, while I am still immortal. The outcome should be obvious. And if I am going to die, I want to at least know why. It's simple. The reason you're going to die is because you stuck your nose into something you shouldn't have. Yuan sighed, what else am I supposed to do? I need the key you took from the Holy Dragon clan. By the way, aren't you afraid of offending Dragon Goddess Yao? In case you forgot, I am her envoy. Dragon Goddess Yao? Ha ha ha. The First Elder began laughing out loud. Who'd be foolish enough to believe such a lie? There's no way you're Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy. She died long ago. Why are you so certain that she died? Did you witness her death with your own eyes? Yuan asked. She hasn't been seen since the Immortal Monarch era. That's more than enough proof. Anyway, enough yapping. I'm going to kill you now. Are you sure you want to do that? The others might become suspicious of you if you return alone. I'm going to tell them that you'd never returned. They can't prove that ID killed you if your corpse is in a place where nobody can reach. Even the Holy Dragon Emperor, who came here with you, won't be able to reach this area. Is that so? What a pity. Unfortunately for you, it won't be that easy to kill me. Well, see about that. The First Elder raised his hand, palm facing Yuan, and unleashed a wave of immortal chi. The pressure surged through the water, seeking to suppress him with overwhelming force. Yuan, however, remained unfazed. A faint smile curved his lips. Immortal chi? He said calmly. What, afraid to use celestial chi? Worried you might alert the others? Although the First Elder had reached the second level of the God Ascension realm, he had yet to fully master celestial chi. Because of this, he was reluctant to risk using it, especially when doing so might alert the others to his betrayal. Looks like I hit the nail on its head, Yuan smiled. You won't be able to kill me with immortal chi alone, even if you're at the God Ascension realm. Yuan activated Dragon Awakening, causing his aura and strength to surge tremendously. It was so powerful that it took the First Elder by surprise. How can a mortal human release such pressure? And why does he seem so confident? Does he really think that he can defeat me with the difference in our cultivation? What a joke. I'll rip that head off those shoulders with my bare hands. The first elder flew at Yuan. Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven and began fighting the first elder. A god ascension realm cultivator, huh? Need my help? Zi Xian's voice suddenly resounded inside Yuan's head. So you're finally awake. Not yet. I want to test my current limit, he said. If you say so. Hundreds of exchanges later, a grim realization settled over the first elder. He couldn't overpower Yuan through brute strength. The revelation was nothing short of shocking. He was a god ascension realm cultivator, a dragon no less, beings renowned for their overwhelming physical might and dominance in close combat. And yet, he was being steadily pushed back by a mere human, one who stood several cultivation realms below him. Is this the strength of a god ascension realm cultivator? What a disappointment. Yuan mocked. However, he knew that the first elder was holding back most of his strength. Imprudent brat. Suddenly, the first elder's appearance began to shift. Blue scales rippled across his skin like living armor. His eyes burned brighter, and his aura surged. He had activated Dragon Awakening, though not in its complete form. Even so, the partial transformation greatly amplified his power, making his already formidable presence even more oppressive. After activating Dragon Awakening, the first elder's power surged, and he began to push Yuan back, but only slightly. I guess you don't want a painless death. In that case, allow me to assist you. Realizing brute force alone wouldn't be enough, the first elder finally began unleashing his martial techniques, skills he had deliberately withheld until now. Current cleaving strike. The first elder swung his claws with such immense force that the very water around him split apart. Trapped by the water's resistance, Yuan's movements were heavily restricted, making it impossible to evade the devastating blow. The first elder's claws tore through him with brutal precision, rending his body into 3 separate parts, blood clouding the water as shockwaves rippled through the depths. Humph! Believing he had finally ended the battle, the first elder let out a breath and deactivated his Dragon Awakening. But just as the mist of blood began to settle, a gleam of silver light tore through it, a spear, surging forth with deadly precision. What? The first elder gasped, caught off guard. He moved to evade, but his guard was down, and the strike was too sudden. The spear pierced through him before he could fully react. Though the spear struck him, it hadn't landed a fatal blow. The first elder jumped backward through the water, blood trailing from the wound as he clenched his teeth in pain and disbelief. As the blood mist fully cleared, the first elder's eyes widened in disbelief. Yuan stood there with the dragon god's vengeance in his grasp, completely unharmed. How are you still alive? The first elder roared, his voice echoing with disbelief and fury. I know I tore your body to pieces. You sure? Maybe it was just your imagination, Yuan calmly spoke. After all, you're quite old already. Bullshit. I know my technique landed. There was even blood. What the hell are you? The first elder clenched his fists in frustration. Chapter 1961, A Taste of His Own Medicine. Chapter 1961, A Taste of His Own Medicine. Don't get ahead of yourself and think you've already defeated me. Although you managed to land a hit on me, this amount of damage is nothing. No, it's over for you. Yuan suddenly interrupted. What are you? Just as the first elder opened his mouth to speak, he froze, his expression contorting in agony. A searing pain suddenly erupted from within, spreading through his body like wildfire. It felt as though his very blood was boiling, his insides being scorched from the inside out. He staggered, clutching his chest before coughing up a mouthful of dark blood. What did you do to me? He shouted, his voice a mix of panic and disbelief. Since you tried to kill me with poison, I'm giving you a taste of your own medicine. Poison? You poisoned me? But I also have poison immunity. The 10,000 poison immunity. The first elder was in disbelief. Yuan chuckled and responded in a mocking tone, just the 10,000 poison immunity? You'd need at least true poison immunity to deal with the Heaven's Bane. Heaven's Bane? You mean to tell me that you can use the most potent poison in the 9 heavens? Impossible. Not even the Poison Dragon Emperor can use that level of poison. Believe what you want, but you'll die soon. Yuan shrugged. Since his life was in jeopardy, the First Elder no longer cared about being caught and used his celestial chi to not only attack Yuan but also to resist the poison in his body. Although Heaven's Bane was regarded as the most potent poison in existence, Yuan's current cultivation was still lacking. As a result, he couldn't instantly kill someone as powerful as the First Elder, a God Ascension Realm cultivator whose resilience and vitality far surpassed even immortals. Even so, the poison was already doing its work, slowly, but relentlessly. Yuan coughed up a mouthful of blood after being struck by celestial chi. How in heaven's name are you still standing? You're just a mortal. The First Elder was greatly baffled to see Yuan withstanding his celestial chi, something even immortals could not resist. After all, celestial chi didn't just assault the body, it attacked the soul as well. Even if he had a strong body, his soul should be a different story. Unless his soul strength is just as monstrous as his physique, he shouldn't be alive after being hit by celestial chi, much less standing. The First Elder coughed up another mouthful of blood when his focus was broken for a second due to shock. I told you that killing me wouldn't be easy. Yuan stared at the First Elder with a cold grin on his face. Though he was resisting the First Elder's celestial chi, it wasn't easy. In fact, he was barely standing. If I don't kill him quickly, he'll definitely die here. The First Elder cried inwardly. Yuan could see the fear and anxiety in the First Elder's eyes and provoked him even further. Is that fear I sense? A God Ascension Realm cultivator fearing a mortal like me? That's quite hilarious, shut up. The First Elder let out a furious roar as he unleashed his celestial chi to its absolute limit, so recklessly that it began to tear into his own body, inflicting internal damage in a desperate attempt to purge the poison. Yuan was unable to withstand the overwhelming celestial chi and finally fell to his knees. That was a foolish thing to do. Despite the searing pain coursing through him, Yuan let out a low chuckle, his voice calm and cutting. Using your celestial chi so recklessly, he said, eyes fixed on the writhing elder, will only make the poison spread faster. Sure enough, the poison within the First Elder's body suddenly surged in response, spreading like wildfire through every vein and organ. Within moments, his strength crumbled, and he collapsed to the ocean floor, his body trembling, his breath ragged. But he wasn't dead. Even with his entire body consumed by poison, a cultivator at the God Ascension Realm didn't perish so easily. However, he was essentially paralyzed. In such a condition, he couldn't even lift a finger, much less use celestial chi. Once the pressure on him was gone, Yuan stood up and slowly approached the First Elder with a grin on his face. Looks like the one who'll be dying today will be you. Yuan raised his sword and prepared to decapitate the First Elder. But just as he swung, a sudden surge of force swept through the water. In the next instant, something struck his blade mid-swing with a sharp clang, deflecting it before it could strike the First Elder. The force of the clash also sent Yuan skidding backward through the water. Regaining his balance, he quickly turned his gaze toward the source, only for his eyes to narrow in recognition. A familiar figure stood right in front of the First Elder, clearly trying to protect him. So, Yuan said calmly, raising an eyebrow, you were in on this too, Third Elder? The Third Elder didn't immediately respond and turned to look at the First Elder, who was staring at him and clearly wanted to speak but couldn't. He picked up the First Elder before speaking, you have no idea who you're messing with. You'll regret messing with our plan. I sure don't. Why don't you enlighten me so I know who I am dealing with? The Third Elder coldly sneered. Don't worry, you'll find out eventually when they come for you. Whoever they are, they won't find out if I kill you too here. Yuan prepared to use the Immortal Monarch's techniques. However, before he could do so, the Third Elder activated some sort of teleportation treasure, teleporting the First Elder and himself away. TCH. They ran away, huh? Yuan sucked his teeth in annoyance. What a pity. If you had let me fight, I could have killed both of them in an instant, said Zixian. Yuan shook his head. That would be overkill. Save your energy for something that's actually worth it. Chapter 1962, The Elder's Betrayal. Chapter 1962, The Elder's Betrayal. After the first elder and the third elder left, Yuan returned to purifying the poison. A week later, the pitch-black taint that once clouded the waters had completely vanished. The sea now shimmered with clarity, indistinguishable from the untouched stretches around it, serene, pure, and free of corruption. Once he purified all of the poison, Yuan made his way back to the Azure Dragon clan's residence while taking the now purified orb with him. However, he didn't even make it halfway back to the Azure Dragon clan's living quarters before he encountered Zhao Zhenhai, Holy Dragon Emperor, and the others. Senior Envoy. Are you okay? The Dragon Emperor asked him. Yes, I am fine. What did you do to this place? Zhao Zhenhai asked, his expression one of utter disbelief. It used to be filthy, and we could barely get this far without blacking out. Yuan held out the now purified orb and spoke calmly. This was the source of the poison. But I've already cleansed it. If you go a bit further down, you'll see a corpse. I see. I'll have the first elder analyze it, said Zhao Zhenhai. By the way, where's the first elder? He came out here with you, correct? We came all the way out here because we sensed his celestial qi and thought he was in a fight. Yuan didn't immediately respond. What's wrong? Zhao Zhenhai asked. Yuan looked at the second elder, who was still with the Azure Dragon clan, and said, You want like what I am about to say. Hell, you might even get angry at me for even saying it. After taking a deep breath, Yuan continued, The first elder betrayed the Azure Dragon clan. He had a hand in the poison, and he attacked me while I was trying to purify it. What? Everyone in the Azure Dragon clan exclaimed loudly, their faces filled with disbelief. It's not just the first elder, either. The third elder is also involved. Zhao Zhenhai subconsciously took several steps back from absorbing the shock. There's no way. You're making that up. Zhao Binglan suddenly shouted. The first elder and the third elder are some of the most loyal members of the family. They wouldn't do something like betray us. Yuan shrugged and said, Why don't you listen to the details before you come to a conclusion? Here is what happened. Yuan recounted the entire series of events in detail, from the moment he first began purifying the poisonous orb, to the fierce battle that followed with the first elder, and how the third elder had appeared unexpectedly, intervened at the last moment to save his fellow conspirator before vanishing without a trace. Ha ha ha. Do you really expect us to believe that you defeated the first elder, who was at the second level of God Ascension and forced the third elder to escape, when you're only at the peak of Divine Emperor? Zhao Binglan laughed out loud, finding his claims humorous and ridiculous. If you don't believe it, I can show it to you. How I defeated the first elder, that is. However, it's going to be a very painful experience. Yuan narrowed his eyes at her. Zhao Binglan immediately erupted in anger, causing her aura to surge. Stop. Zhao Zhenhai suddenly roared. But father, if the first elder and the third elder are innocent, they will appear before us to explain everything, he said before looking at Yuan and continuing, If what you claim is true, they probably want return to the Azure Dragon clan, right? Yuan shook his head and said, No, they will undoubtedly return. However, it'll be to destroy the Azure Dragon clan or finish whatever I intervened. Zhao Zhenhai clenched his fists in frustration. We don't know that for sure. For all we know, they could have already returned to the residences and are waiting for our return. Then why don't we return to the residence first? Yuan suggested. Zhao Zhenhai nodded, and they began making their way back to the Azure Dragon clan's living quarters. I'm sorry you have to experience this, Senior Envoy. The Dragon Emperor apologized to him as they moved. If only we hadn't gambled away the key, it's fine. Sometime later, they returned to the Azure Dragon clan's living quarters. Has anyone seen the first elder or the third elder? Did they return yet? Zhao Zhenhai questioned every single individual they passed by in the courtyard. No, Your Majesty. The first elder and the third elder have not returned yet. We can send them a message requesting their return. Do it immediately. If they don't respond, let me know. The servants hurriedly went to contact the first elder and the third elder through their communication jade slip. However, neither of them responded. Sometime later, Your Majesty, we tried contacting them several times, but neither of them is responding. No way, Zhao Zhenhai suddenly staggered backward, his face pale with disbelief. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor, breath shallow, eyes wide. The reality that two of the clan's highest elders, pillars of the Azure Dragon clan, had betrayed them from within was sinking in. Father, there must be an explanation. Zhao Binglan cried out, her voice trembling. First grandpa and third grandpa would never betray us. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head in denial. They had been there since the day she was born, watching over her, guiding her, even treating her as their grandchild. The thought that they could turn against the Azure Dragon clan, against her, was too painful to accept. Xianbing and the second elder remained silent, but their pale faces and trembling forms betrayed the storm of emotions churning within them. Why? Zhao Zhenhai muttered, his voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. Why would they betray the Azure Dragon clan? They've been supporting the clan for longer than even I have. His fists clenched, and a hint of denial lingered in his tone. It doesn't make any damn sense. Instead of sticking it in their faces, Yuan remained silent and patiently waited for them to accept the situation. Chapter 1963, Absorbing the Poison. Chapter 1963, Absorbing the Poison. Eventually, the Azure Dragon clan calmed down. We'll deal with the first elder and the third elder later. For now, since you purified the poison, does that mean our problem has been fixed? Zhao Zhenhai asked Yuan. He shook his head. Hard to say. Since the Azure Dragon clan has been exposed to the poison for thousands of years, it might have a permanent effect on your bloodline. However, it's also possible for your bloodline to improve in future generations. Can't you just purify the poison in our body? The Xianbing asked. Like I said, the poison is already deeply rooted in your body. It'd be like trying to remove salt that has already been dissolved in water. It's not impossible, but it's going to be very difficult and time-consuming. How long would it take for you to cleanse one person? Zhao Zhenhai asked. I won't know until I try it, Yuan said. Can you try it? Only the younger generation really needs to be healed, since they're going to be the ones carrying on our bloodline and legacy. I'll give it a try, but if it takes too long or is too risky, I won't be able to help you. Zhao Zhenhai nodded and turned to look at Xianbing. Xianbing, are you willing to be first? He nodded and said, of course. Anything for the family. Now lend us a quiet place with little to no disturbance, said Yuan. Zhao Zhenhai brought them to his own room and said, they'll forbid anyone from approaching this place so you can do the treatment in complete silence. Yuan looked at Xianbing and asked, are you ready? Whenever you are. They sat down with Yuan sitting behind Xianbing. I'm going to examine your body first. Do not resist my spiritual energy. Yuan placed his palms on Xuanbing's back and began spreading his spiritual energy around to examine the interior of Xuanbing's body. The poison isn't affecting your physical strength, and your internal organs remain unharmed, Yuan said as he carefully examined Xianbing. As for the poison itself, it's deeply embedded within your body, from your blood to your cells, to the point that it's almost undetectable. I'm going to begin the purifying process now. Let me know if it hurts. Without hesitation, Yuan began the process of removing the poison from Xuanbing's body. Unlike traditional purification techniques, his method was far more direct. He wasn't neutralizing the poison but absorbing it into himself. Xuanbing's body began to tremble uncontrollably, his muscles tensing as the poison was drawn out. Yet not a single sound escaped his lips. He clenched his jaw and bore it in silence, choosing to endure rather than show weakness. Seeing this, Yuan decided to continue without saying a word. Exactly 1 week later, Yuan paused the process and examined Xuanbing's condition, comparing his current condition to what it had been when they first began to see how long it'd take to fully heal him. At this rate, it will take around 4 months to remove all of the poison in your body, and the pain will only get worse, Yuan said to Xianbing. 4 months. Xianbing swallowed nervously. It's okay. I can endure it. No. I will endure it. Alright, let me speak with your father before we continue. Sometime later, Zhao Zhenhai appeared before them. I can heal him in 4 months. Yuan went straight to the point. That's great. Then, however, I will be done once I heal him. Yuan suddenly interrupted. I have already solved the source of your problem, so I am technically already done. Once I heal him, I'll need the key. If you cannot accept this, then things might get complicated. The excitement on Zhao Zhenhai's face immediately disappeared when he remembered that Yuan wasn't helping them for free. Regardless of their situation, none of it was Yuan's problem. Moreover, it was not as if the Azure Dragon clan's lives were in danger. Is there no room for negotiation? I have 5 children, which would only take a little under 2 years to cure. In Zhao Zhenhai's eyes, 2 years was nothing. 2 years may be nothing in your eyes, but don't forget that I am a human. I also have many things to do. 2 years is a long time for me. However, if you make it worthwhile, I guess I can stay here for 2 years. The Treasury. I'll let you take 1 treasure from our Azure Dragon clan's treasury for every child of mine you cure after Xianbing. Zhao Zhenhai said. Yuan narrowed his eyes, but he didn't immediately respond. Let me think about it. We can continue this conversation once I heal your son, since we still don't know if he can endure it until I completely remove the poison from his body. It's a painful process, after all. Okay. Zhao Zhenhai nodded, hope flickering within his gaze. After speaking with Zhao Zhenhai, Yuan spoke with the Dragon Emperor. I'll be here for at least another 4 months to heal Xianbing. After that, I may or may not heal the others, which could take another 2 years. I'm not going to ask you to stay here with me, so you can return to the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Are you sure you want me to leave? What if, it's fine. I doubt the Azure Dragon clan would do anything to me at this point. Even if they want to do something, Dragon Goddess Yao is at my side. Moreover, my friend, Shimeli, should know about my situation. I don't want her to worry. I understand. But instead of leaving immediately, I'll leave in 4 months, just in case. Some time later, Yuan resumed the process of cleansing the poison from Xuanbing's body. Time passed swiftly, and in the blink of an eye, 4 months had gone by. I've successfully removed 99% of the poison from your body. While a trace amount remains, it's insignificant, far too weak to have any effect on you. Yuan said to Xianbing, who was drenched in sweat. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1964, Azure Dragon Clan's Treasury. Chapter 1964, Azure Dragon Clan's Treasury, thank you. Xianbing stood up once he regained enough energy and bowed to Yuan. No problem. They contacted Zhao Zhenhai and the others shortly after. So, how are the results? Zhao Zhenhai asked. I have purified 99% of the poison in his blood. As for the remaining percent, it's too little to have any effect on him, so he's essentially fully healed, Yuan explained. Thank you. Zhao Zhenhai said with a slightly lowered head. Now, about the others, Yuan then said, let me rest for a few days, then I want to take a look at your treasury. If the contents interest me, I'll accept your offer. In that case, contact me whenever you are ready. I have already prepared a room for you. Yuan was led to his room shortly after. I'll head back to the Dragon's Spiral Mountain now, said the Dragon Emperor in front of his room. Yuan nodded. I'll return as soon as I am done here. Thanks for coming here with me. The Dragon Emperor left Yuan alone shortly after, but he didn't leave the Azure Dragon clan yet. Jiao Zhenhai, I will be returning to the Dragon Spiral Mountain now. Already? Does that mean the envoy won't? That's not it. I will be returning alone. Senior envoy will remain here. In fact, I believe that the senior envoy has already decided to help your family, hence why he's sending me away. Is that so? Jiao Zhenhai sighed in relief. The senior envoy's safety is now your Azure Dragon clan's responsibility. If anything happens to senior envoy while I am gone, you'll have to answer the entire Dragon Spiral Mountain. Jiao Zhenhai sneered. Relax, Dragon Emperor. He's our Azure Dragon clan's savior. Well, return him to the Dragon Spiral Mountain safely once he's done here. The Dragon Emperor nodded and left without saying another word. A few days later, Yuan emerged from his room and was personally escorted by Jiao Zhenhai to the Azure Dragon clan's treasury. Unlike most treasuries confined to physical space, this one was hidden within a separate dimension, Jiao Zhenhai's personal world. Upon entering, Yuan found himself standing before a massive, square-shaped structure that resembled an ancient museum, grand and imposing. The entrance was sealed behind a powerful level 9 formation, a barrier that only Jiao Zhenhai could unlock. Inside, the building opened into a single vast chamber, and Yuan was greeted by an overwhelming sight. Rows upon rows of treasures, each one neatly displayed in elegant cases and along finely carved wall shelves. The sheer number of treasures stored within the chamber caused the air itself to pulse with concentrated spiritual energy. The pressure was immense, so dense and overwhelming that a cultivator at the Spirit Enlightenment realm would be crushed the moment they stepped inside. Take your time looking around, and if you see anything that piques your interest, don't hesitate to speak up, said Jiao Zhenhai as he gestured for Yuan to enter. Yuan wasted no time and immediately began looking at the treasures. The vast majority of the treasures within the treasury were weapons, armor, and artifacts. Most were of mythic grade or higher. The shelves dedicated to pills held a dazzling array of Tier 8 elixirs, and among them, a handful of exceedingly rare Tier 9 pills. Only the best and most powerful treasures make it to our treasury, said Jiao Zhenhai in a prideful tone. I can see that, Yuan said with a smile. The more Yuan explored the treasury, the more he was tempted to accept Jiao Zhenhai's offer. 2 years. While it's not a lot of time for most people, it's a lot to me. With his talents, Yuan could easily achieve what most people take centuries to achieve in 2 years, not to mention his real body was still stuck on Earth. After several hours of meticulously examining each treasure, Yuan finally reached the far end of the room. There, set apart from all the others, was a single display, elevated slightly and encased in its own reinforced barrier. Inside sat a breathtaking blue crystal, glowing faintly with a serene yet powerful light. Despite its relatively small size, no bigger than a drop of water, its luster shimmered like moonlight on still water, and its aura was unlike anything else in the room. What is this treasure? Yuan asked, his gaze lingering on the luminous blue crystal. Jiao Zhenhai's expression stiffened slightly before he offered a nervous smile and said, That is our family heirloom, the Tear of the Azure Heavens. Tear of the Azure Heavens? Never heard of it. So this is the treasure that the person who poisoned your clan wanted. What does it do? Jiao Zhenhai shook his head and said, I'm being completely honest when I say this, but I have no clue what it does. Huh? So you have an unknown crystal as your family heirloom? Yuan raised his eyebrows in puzzlement. This treasure has been with our family since ancient times. It is said that it used to belong to our ancestor. Yuan stared at the crystal in silence. Its unique aura wasn't the only reason he took an interest in it. The 9 dragon symbols have been acting up since he entered the treasury, and it was currently having the strongest reaction. Is there any chance you'd be willing to give me this treasure for the treatment? I'm willing to treat all of your children for this one treasure, Yuan said. That's. I'm sorry, but that's impossible. Yuan pondered for a moment before speaking. What if I give you a few drops of Immortal Monarch's blood? What? The Immortal Monarch's blood? Zhao Zhenhai couldn't believe his ears and almost fell down from shock. Among the beast race, there existed a widely famous legend, one that had endured for generations. It was said that the blood of the immortal monarch possessed a miraculous property, the ability to elevate the bloodline of any who absorbed it. For beasts of royal lineage, who valued the purity of their bloodline more than life itself, such a thing was beyond priceless. Zhao Zhenhai swallowed nervously as he seriously contemplated Yuan's offer. Chapter 1965, Tier of the Azure Heavens. Chapter 1965, Tier of the Azure Heavens. After Yuan offered the immortal monarch's blood for the Tier of the Azure Heavens, Zhao Zhenhai began to seriously contemplate his offer. The immortal monarch's blood would not only help the Azure Dragon clan recover their weakened bloodline but might even strengthen it past their original purity. How many drops of the immortal monarch's blood do you possess? Zhao Zhenhai asked in a hesitant tone. Yuan smiled and said, enough for you and all of your children. That much? Zhao Zhenhai almost couldn't believe his ears. However, Zhao Zhenhai didn't immediately agree and pondered. The Tears of Azure Heavens has been with our family since ancient times, but if I'm being honest, we have no use for it. Hell, we don't even know what it does. However, if we have the immortal monarch's blood, it would solve our predicament and might even strengthen our bloodline. But for him to offer something as valuable as the immortal monarch's blood, the Tears of Azure Heavens must be as valuable, if not even more valuable, than the immortal monarch's blood. Damn it. Do I take his offer or not? Eventually, Zhao Zhenhai made up his mind and spoke. However, Zhao Zhenhai's voice abruptly stopped, and his eyes widened with shock and disbelief when Yuan suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Both Zhao Zhenhai and Yuan simultaneously looked down, only to see a gleaming blue trident jutting clean through Yuan's chest, right where his heart was located. The next moment, Yuan collapsed to the ground. What? Zhao Zhenhai exclaimed in bewilderment, mostly because he recognized the trident. He subconsciously turned to look at the entrance and saw a lone figure standing there. Second Elder? How did you get in here? No, more important, what do you think you're doing? What does it look like I am doing? The Second Elder calmly responded. Don't tell me, you've betrayed the Azure Dragon clan too? Zhao Zhenhai's voice trembled with disbelief as shock flooded his face. After the First Elder and the Third Elder's sudden betrayal, they had tirelessly interrogated the Second Elder for the past 4 months to ensure that he wasn't working with them, since the three of them were like peas in a pod. And after many hours of questioning, the Second Elder had been cleared of any suspicion. But alas, why did the three of you betray the Azure Dragon clan? Zhao Zhenhai roared as his cultivation erupted furiously. The Second Elder shrugged and said, it's quite simple. The Azure Dragon clan is no longer worth our protection and loyalty. There's no way you'd be stupid enough to betray us over such a reason. The Second Elder smiled and said, you're right. We found a place that's worth our loyalty. Who? Who are you working for? Zhao Zhenhai roared as he pounced at the Second Elder. Does it even matter? The Azure Dragon clan will soon cease to exist, anyway. The Second Elder calmly raised his hand and deflected Zhao Zhenhai's furious strike. The clash sent shockwaves rippling through the Treasury, but with both of them being at the 4th level of the God Ascension realm, they stood locked in place, equally matched. I'll force everything out of you even if it's the last thing I do. Zhao Zhenhai roared. I'd like to see you try. Zhao Zhenhai and the Second Elder clashed fiercely, their battle shaking the very foundation of the dimension. Blades of energy tore through the air, waves of celestial chi collided, and spatial distortions cracked around them like glass. Yet, despite the overwhelming power of their techniques, not a single treasure in the room was disturbed. Every weapon, pill, and artifact remained untouched. After nearly 1,000 intense exchanges, the tide of battle began to shift, and the Second Elder's cultivation suddenly increased to the 5th level. The Second Elder, though evenly matched at first, immediately started to gain the upper hand. Ha ha ha. How do you like this? I, who have always been slightly behind you, am now stronger. This is the result of betraying the Azure Dragon clan. You despicable bastard. Eventually, the second elder overpowered Zhao Zhenhai and sent him flying across the treasury. Once I kill you, acquire the tier of the Azure Heavens, and accomplish our goal, well, receive even more benefit from the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. Zhao Zhenhai trembled after hearing the name Mystic Sea Dragon clan. You were colluding with the Mystic Sea Dragon clan this entire time? You low-life bastards. Zhao Zhenhai roared, his voice thunderous with fury. The second elder covered his mouth with a hand and spoke in a teasing tone, "Oops. I wasn't supposed to reveal that." Well, it doesn't really matter since you're going to die so. In the midst of his sentence, the second elder suddenly stiffened, a sharp jolt of pain lancing through his back, like a blade piercing straight through him. His eyes widened in disbelief as he slowly turned around, only to see Yuan standing mere inches behind him, a dagger firmly gripped in his hand. You! How are you still alive? The second elder gasped, staggering slightly as a burning pain rippled throughout his body. However, what stunned him even more than the fact that Yuan was still alive after taking a spear through the heart was how he had managed to slip behind him completely unnoticed. Just like the first elder, you seem to like attacking people from the back, so I'm letting you experience it for yourself. How is it? Do you enjoy it? Snapping out of his daze, the second elder roared loudly and lashed out with a wild, powerful swing of his arm. Splat! Yuan's head was torn clean from his shoulders before it hurtled across the room, where it struck the wall with a sickening splatter of blood. That son of a bitch. I don't know how he survived being struck in the heart, but he's definitely dead now. No mortal can survive without their head. However, as the second elder turned away from the blood-smeared wall and back toward Yuan, his eyes widened in shock and his complexion paled instantly, almost as if he'd seen a ghost. Sup, Yuan said with a smile on his face. Chapter 1966, A Glimpse of Zi Xian's Prowess. Chapter 1966, A Glimpse of Zi Xian's Prowess. As if struck by a sudden nightmare, the second elder recoiled in horror. With a sharp gasp, he leapt backward instinctively. What the hell are you? The second elder exclaimed, his voice riddled with fear. How are you still alive? Before Yuan could even respond, the second elder spoke again. It can't be. That regenerative ability. You're a demon. Ha ha ha. Yuan laughed at the second elder's assumptions. Are those your last words? The second elder clenched his fists and roared, so what if you're a demon? You're still a mere divine emperor. I can crush you with a finger. The second elder raised a trembling finger at Yuan, gathering celestial chi with murderous intent blazing in his eyes. But the moment the celestial chi began to surge through him, a searing pain erupted from deep within his body, far more intense than before. His expression twisted in agony as the burning sensation multiplied, coursing through his veins like wildfire, threatening to tear him apart from the inside. This is poison. You poisoned me? The second elder immediately retrieved a handful of pills and swallowed them simultaneously after realizing Yuan had poisoned him. Those pills won't save you, Yuan said coldly. Heaven's Bane is one of the most lethal poisons in the universe. Unless you have specifically prepared for it, you won't get rid of it. Moreover, Yuan had struck the second elder with Baneful Abyss, his sole weapon that not only amplified the potency of Heaven's Bane but also accelerated its effects to a terrifying degree. Despite having a much higher cultivation than the first elder, it took less time for the second elder to succumb to the poison. The second elder fell to his knees a moment later. However, despite his seemingly hopeless situation, he smiled and said, So you managed to kill my physical body, but as long as my soul is intact, I am not dead. I know, Yuan said. I also know that I don't have the power to destroy your soul. However, I know someone who can. Ha ha ha. The second elder laughed, even as pain twisted his features. If you're talking about the clan leader, not even he could destroy my soul. Don't underestimate a God Ascension realm cultivator. Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly, his tone calm and dismissive. God Ascension? He sneered. I've killed more of them than I can count. Yuan immediately put away Baneful Abyss and retrieved number 1 under heaven. Xian, I'll leave him to you. What happened to using my energy on something worth it? He's hardly worth my energy, Xian said. I know, but unfortunately, we cannot let him live. Suddenly, number 1 under heaven began to tremble, its entire form radiating an intense golden light. The brilliance grew blinding, until the light itself began to shift, condensing, reshaping. Moments later, standing where the weapon once hovered was the beautiful figure of an adult woman. Her presence was regal and imposing, her voluptuous form wrapped in flowing black and golden robes that shimmered like starlight. His sword transformed into a human. Zhao Zhenhai watched the scene before him with a dumbfounded expression. Xian examined her body for a moment before turning to look at Yuan with a dissatisfied face and said, I am able to take this form since you've improved your cultivation to Divine Emperor, but it's not good enough. I can barely last a few minutes right now, and that won't be anywhere near enough to satisfy me. I will need to be able to remain in this form for at least a month to have a proper session with you. A whole month? Please spare me. Yuan said with a stiff smile. I refuse. This is non-negotiable, especially since you left me in that depressing place for so long. The second elder stood frozen, his eyes locked on Xian as she casually chatted with Yuan, but not out of infatuation. It wasn't her devastating beauty that left him dazed, but the overwhelming, unfathomable aura radiating from her presence. Anyway, let me take care of this trash first. Xian slowly turned her gaze toward the second elder. The moment her eyes met his body began to tremble uncontrollably. The sheer weight of her presence, conveyed through nothing more than a casual glance, was enough to crush his will. In that single moment, all hope drained from the second elder's eyes. He knew he wasn't facing a cultivator but something far beyond his comprehension. How dare a lowly rat lay its filthy paws on my beloved? Xian's voice rang out. She took a single step toward the second elder, graceful yet absolute. The moment her foot touched the ground, a ripple of overwhelming force erupted outward, infused with supreme sword chi. The entire dimension quaked in silent awe, as if bowing to the sheer majesty of Xian's presence. All around them, the display cases that had remained undamaged even through the cataclysmic battle between Zhao Zhenhai and the second elder began to crack. As Xian took her second step, every display case within the treasury dissolved into countless fragments impossible to see with the naked eye. The second elder's body met the same fate. One moment he was there, and he was gone the next. No blood, no remains. Not even a speck of dust lingered. He had been erased, utterly and completely. Yet, the second elder was still alive, as his soul still existed. However, that wouldn't last long, lasting only until Xian took her third step. Realizing that he was a goner, the second elder spoke to Zhao Zhenhai through voice transmission before he was erased from existence. Even if you kill me, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan is already on their way here. It'll only be a matter of time before the Azure Dragon clan falls to them. After the second elder was reduced to nothingness, Xian turned on her heel and began walking toward Yuan. Her steps, though silent, carried a presence that made the very air part before her. When she stood before him, her body glowing, she leaned in and gave him a passionate kiss with her soft lips. I'm going to take a nap. Work hard to improve your cultivation so we can have more fun later, she said to him before returning to her sword form and going silent. Chapter 1967, Consuming the Tear of the Azure Heavens. Chapter 1967, Consuming the Tear of the Azure Heavens. After putting away number 1 under heaven, Yuan turned to look at Zhao Zhenhai, who was sitting on the floor with a dazed look on his face, and said, I apologize for the destruction of this place. Zhao Zhenhai looked around with a dumbfounded look on his face before responding, it's fine. As long as the treasures themselves aren't damaged. Thank you. Now then, about what you were trying to tell me about our offer. Zhao Zhenhai slowly stood up before speaking in a solemn tone. I am willing to give you the tear of the Azure heavens for the immortal monarch's blood, but I want one more thing from you. What is it? Help me defend my Azure Dragon clan, said Zhao Zhenhai with a serious frown on his face. Defend the Azure Dragon clan? What about you talking about? Yuan raised an eyebrow, unaware of what the second elder said to Zhao Zhenhai through voice transmission. Zhao Zhenhai immediately explained the situation. The Mystic Sea Dragon clan, whom the elders have been working with, are coming here as we speak. The second elder said this to me right before his death through voice transmission. Without the three elders, our chances of defeating the Mystic Sea Dragon clan are slim to none. However, with you, and your sword's assistance, we might be able to win. Yuan didn't immediately respond. Zi Xian had expended most of her energy just now and would probably take several weeks, if not months, to fully recover. If the Mystic Sea Dragon clan showed up before she recovered, it might get a bit dangerous. Of course, he still had Dragon Goddess Yao, but he wasn't sure how much she could actually do in her current state. After contemplating for some time, Yuan nodded and said, "All right, I'll help the Azure Dragon clan. However, I will need the tear of the Azure heavens now. My sword is exhausted after killing the second elder and needs to recover." Zhao Zhenhai nodded, "Okay." Some time later, Zhao Zhenhai handed the tear of the Azure heavens to Yuan. "I'm going to use this right now. You should alert the rest of your family. I know this isn't the proper time to ask this, but what does it do?" Zhao Zhenhai couldn't contain his curiosity. However, Yuan shrugged and responded in a genuine voice, "I don't know." "What? Then why do you want it?" "My instincts," he said. Zhao Zhenhai fell silent. After a moment, he asked, "Are you going to do it here?" "Preferably. Since nobody can disturb me here." "Don't worry, I won't steal your treasures, if that's what you're worried about. I trust you." Without saying anything else, Zhao Zhenhai left the treasury and summoned everyone from the Azure Dragon clan. Meanwhile, Yuan sat on the floor with the tear of the Azure heavens in his grasp. Yuan's cold resistance has been increasing since he touched the tear of the Azure heavens, which was a pleasant surprise. "Do any of you guys know what this is?" Yuan asked the others. "No." Lan Yingying quickly responded. "I have also never seen or heard of this treasure before," said Yuning. "That is the heart of the heaven-chilling ice phoenix," said Feng Yuxiang. "This is the heart of a phoenix?" Yuan repeated, raising an eyebrow in surprise. "Yes," Feng Yuxiang confirmed. "The heaven-chilling ice phoenix is a rare and powerful species whose flames don't burn, but freeze everything they touch. Their hearts contain immense Yin energy and are considered priceless among Yin attribute cultivators. Honestly, I'm surprised one managed to be preserved for this long," Feng Yuxiang remarked. "The heaven-chilling ice phoenix has been extinct for ages, after all." "So, what kind of effect does it have?" Yuan asked. "It's quite extraordinary," Feng Yuxiang explained. "For cultivators, it grants the ability to cultivate and wield Yin-attributed energy, even if they had no prior affinity for it. As for beasts, consuming it can transform their bloodline into one aligned with Yin. And if they already possess a Yin-attributed bloodline, it will elevate their lineage to an entirely new level. No wonder the Mystic Sea Dragon clan is trying to destroy the Azure Dragon clan just so they can get their hands on this treasure," Yuan mumbled. "Anyway, I am going to consume this now." Without a moment of hesitation, Yuan brought the heart of the heaven-chilling ice phoenix to his lips and took a bite. Though it had the hardness of crystals, his teeth sank into it effortlessly, as if biting into a piece of delicate cake. The moment it touched his tongue, the crystallized heart melted away like cotton candy, releasing an intense wave of chilling energy that spread through his body. Suddenly, Yuan's entire body erupted in a blaze of azure-colored flames, radiating an intense cold so profound it felt as though he were being burned and frozen simultaneously. The surrounding air trembled, and in the blink of an eye, the entire treasury was coated in a thick layer of glistening ice. Shelves, walls, even the very ground beneath him crystallized under the overwhelming Yin energy now pouring from his body. Yuan himself also turned into an ice statue. As for his cold resistance, it improved at a frightening rate. In just a few days, his progress skyrocketed to 99%. Meanwhile, the Azure Dragon clan began mobilizing for war against the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. With a population exceeding 100,000, including those residing in the city, their forces were vast. While not every member was suited for combat, the overwhelming majority had already reached at least the divine realm. The city, once bustling like any ordinary settlement, transformed into a fortress overnight. Barricades rose where markets once stood, defensive formations were activated across the seafloor, and patrols of armored warriors now roamed the area around the Azure Dragon clan's territory. Chapter 1968, Completed Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. Chapter 1968, Completed Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. Where's Senior Envoy? Zhao Xianbing asked Zhao Zhenhai a month after they began preparing for war. He's in seclusion. Are you sure he'll even be of any help? He's only at the peak of Divine Emperor. Zhao Binglan said, expressing her doubts. And for the record, I still don't believe he managed to defeat the First Elder. Zhao Zhenhai looked at his foolish daughter and said, I didn't mention this, but it was he who killed the Second Elder. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here right now. What? He killed the Second Elder, who is the strongest amongst the three elders. The others from the Azure Dragon clan expressed shock and bewilderment after learning of this. Binglan, you need to start respecting him, or you'll come to regret it later, Zhao Xianbing said to her. Your hate is unreasonable in the first place. He didn't do anything to offend you, and he's helped our clan tremendously. If it weren't for him, the three elders would have continued to stab us in the back. That's... Zhao Binglan fell silent. Suddenly, someone rushed into the room and shouted, We've spotted the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. They'll arrive in our territory in 2 weeks. How many people do they have? Zhao Zhenhai questioned. Around 50,000. They only brought a fourth of their forces? These bastards are underestimating us a little too much. Zhao Zhenhai gritted his teeth in frustration. Yet, he didn't dare to underestimate their opponents. The Mystic Sea Dragon clan was a royal bloodline just like them, after all. At the same time, Yuan had just finished absorbing the tier of the Azure Heavens. Boom! The moment Yuan completed his Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique, the bottleneck that kept him at the peak of Divine Emperor shattered, and his cultivation began soaring to the next level. In the blink of an eye, Yuan's cultivation surged to the peak of the Divine Ancestor realm, just a single step away from Immortal Ascension. However, entering the Immortal Ascension realm wasn't as simple as accumulating enough spiritual energy. A cultivator needed exceptional soul strength and, more importantly, profound insight into the nature of cultivation itself. This was the barrier that trapped countless experts at the Divine Ancestor level. Of course, Yuan was no ordinary cultivator. His soul strength already rivaled, if not surpassed, that of immortals, and with the vast experience and insight had accumulated from his past lives, he only needed to attempt entering it. No, he could enter Immortal Ascension even in his sleep. After taking a deep breath, Yuan began his attempt to break through to Immortal Ascension, the first step on his path toward true immortality. Moments later, a surge of immortal chi erupted from Yuan's body, flooding the air with boundless pressure. To ascend to the next level, one must continually refine their soul strength and deepen their insights into the Tao. However, for someone like Yuan, it was merely a question of whether he chose to ascend. Mere seconds after stepping into the first level of Immortal Ascension, another surge of immortal chi burst forth from Yuan's body as his cultivation soared into the second level. From that moment on, Yuan advanced through each level as if it were mere child's play. In the blink of an eye, he reached the 9th level of Immortal Ascension, just one step away from becoming an immortal. Yet that final step was unimaginably vast, a chasm where countless cultivators had faltered and fallen. Of course, if Yuan wanted to take that step, he could easily do so. However, when he attempted to do so, he was met by a familiar barrier. So my physique still has room to grow, huh? Yuan mused. Come to think of it, my fire and cold immunities are only at the first stage, while my poison and lightning immunities have already reached their peak. Congratulations on reaching the peak of immortal ascension, young master. Feng Yuxiang cheered loudly. You're now only a step away from becoming a bronze immortal, said Lan Yingying. I have never seen or heard anyone going from the first level to the peak in one sitting. Yu Ning muttered in a dazed voice. It's not just my cultivation that benefited from the tier of the Azure heavens. I also acquired new abilities. Yuan flipped his palms and summoned a blue flame. That's the heaven-chilling ice phoenix's unique flames, the heaven-freezing flame. Feng Yuxiang exclaimed. This is just one of the few abilities I acquired. I'll show you the rest later, Yuan said with a smile. Anyway, how long have I been cultivating? He then asked. A little over a month. Since nobody disturbed me, I guess the Mystic Sea Dragon clan has yet to arrive. Alright, let's go check out the situation. Yuan left the treasury shortly after. The moment Yuan exited the treasury, Zhao Zhenhai sensed it and immediately stopped everything he was doing to meet with Yuan. Senior Envoy. Are you done with your seclusion? Zhao Zhenhai asked him. Yuan nodded and said, yes. He released some of his cultivation. 9th level Immortal Ascension? Did you really reach that level from the peak of Divine Emperor in just a month? Zhao Zhenhai cried out loud, not daring to believe his eyes. It's mostly thanks to the tier of the Azure heavens. What? Tier of the Azure heavens. What is he talking about, father? Zhao Binglan inquired with a dazed look on her face. Zhao Zhenhai, who kept their deal a secret this entire time, finally explained the full situation to everyone there. Chapter 1969, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion. Chapter 1969, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion. What? You gave our family heirloom to him? Binglan exclaimed with a horrified expression after hearing Zhao Zhenhai's explanation. It wasn't just Zhao Binglan. Zhao Xianbing and the others were also just as shocked. None of them could have expected Zhao Zhenhai would be willing to part with their family heirloom. I understand your feelings, but what use is our family heirloom if our clan is destroyed in the process of trying to protect it? Moreover, we will receive the immortal monarch's blood. This is a blessing none of you can even begin to fathom. Zhao Zhenhai said. The immortal monarch's blood? Binglan and the others turned to look at Yuan with suspicious gazes. Yuan smiled back and said, Thank you for letting me consume the tier of the Azure heavens. Here is the immortal monarch's blood, as promised. Before coming out of the treasury, Yuan collected several drops of his blood and stored them in small glass vials. He retrieved a wooden box and handed it over to Zhao Zhenhai, who accepted it with trembling hands. Zhao Zhenhai wasted no time opening the box the moment it was in his grasp, and sure enough, there were 6 vials resting inside, just enough for him and his children. The Mystic Sea Dragon clan will arrive in 2 weeks. We need to absorb this to strengthen ourselves before then. Zhao Zhenhai handed a drop of the immortal monarch's blood to each of his children. Thank you, Senior Envoy. Zhao Xianbing bowed to him. Yuan shook his head and said, No, you don't need to thank me. I didn't give it to you for free. It was an exchange. Zhao Zhenhai and the others wasted no time and went to absorb the immortal monarch's blood. Meanwhile, Yuan asked around about the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. Who are the Mystic Sea Dragon clan? Yuan asked the first person he came across. They'd been longtime rivals of the Azure Dragon clan since ancient times, as both possessed the power to command the waters. However, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan has been adapting more ice attribute techniques lately. The Azure Dragon clan and the Mystic Sea Dragon clan have clashed many times before, but never with stakes this high. Until now, their conflicts were little more than skirmishes. I see. What about the clan leader's wife? What about the rest of his family? Yuan then asked about the Azure Dragon clan situation. The mistress died trying to defeat the intruder who tried to take away our family heirloom many thousands of years ago. As for the others, while they're not dead, they all left the Azure Dragon clan long ago to look for a cure for the curse. However, the clan leaders should have already notified them of the situation, so they should be heading back here as we speak. I see. Yuan mumbled. Hearing that the Mystic Sea Dragon clan has been learning ice attribute techniques made it very clear why they wanted the tear of the Azure Heavens, the heaven-chilling Ice Phoenix's heart. Unfortunately for them, Yuan had already absorbed the treasure for himself, so they were waging a pointless war against the Azure Dragon clan. This made Yuan wonder if the Mystic Sea Dragon clan would back out once they learn about it. A week later, Zhao Zhenhai and the others emerged from seclusion, having fully absorbed the immortal monarch's blood. The first thing they did was test their bloodlines, and as expected, not only had their bloodline's purity been restored, it had even surpassed its former peak, and everyone except Xianbing still had poison in their body. As for Xianbing, who wasn't affected by the poison, his bloodline had become the purest and most powerful in the clan's history, by a wide margin. Seeing Xuanbing's results gave immense hope and joy to the others, who were eager to have their poison cleansed by Yuan. Senior Envoy. Please take care of us after we deal with the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. A young man approached Yuan and bowed to him. Yuan silently nodded. To be honest, I was skeptical about the immortal monarch's blood being real until I absorbed it, Zhao Zhenhai admitted with a stiff smile on his face. But now, I am really glad I accepted your offer. Pleasure doing business with you, Yuan smiled. The following day, something else happened that greatly boosted the Azure Dragon clan's spirit and morale. Reinforcement had arrived. Father. Grandfather and grandmother have returned. Zhao Binglan exclaimed as she hurried to his side. Truly? Zhao Zhenhai gasped. Before he could take a single step, two figures appeared before him, a middle-aged man and woman, both bearing the unmistakable traits of the Azure Dragon clan. Father. Mother. You made it back in time. Zhao Zhenhai hurried to greet them. Although their reinforcement was only two individuals, they were both powerhouses at the God Ascension realm, and Zhao Zhenhai's parents. We rushed back immediately after receiving your emergency contact. What is the situation right now? Asked the middle-aged man. The Mystic Sea Dragon clan will arrive in less than a week, said Zhao Zhenhai. Allow me to keep you up to date for now. Over the next several hours, Zhao Zhenhai recounted everything to his parents, from their fateful encounter with Yuan to how he had resolved their crisis. He made no attempt to conceal the fact that he had traded away their family heirloom in exchange for Yuan's help and the immortal monarch's blood. By the time he finished, both of his parents were trembling, not from rage at the Mystic Sea Dragon clan, nor from the loss of the heirloom, but for an entirely different reason. You little brat. How dare you only ask for enough immortal monarch's blood for your children and yourself? What about us, your own parents? Have you already forgotten about us in such a short time? His father stood up and roared angrily. His mother expressed similar complaints. In other words, they were angry about being left out of a once-in-lifetime experience. Chapter 1970, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 2. Chapter 1970, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 2. When Zhao Zhenhai felt his parents' pressure bearing down on him, he quickly said, wait. He was the one who initiated the offer. 6 drops of the immortal monarch's blood are already a lot. If I asked for more, he would have likely refused. His parents sat back down and withdrew their pressure after hearing this. Do you think he'll be willing to give 2 more drops of the immortal monarch's blood, if he even has them, that is? Why are you asking me? You should ask him instead, Zhao Zhenhai shrugged. His parents immediately stood back up and began beating him. Sometime later, Zhao Zhenhai brought his parents to Yuan. Senior Envoy, do you have some time? My parents would like to speak with you. Your parents? Yuan raised an eyebrow as his gaze met the 2 individuals standing behind Zhao Zhenhai. My name is Zhao Longfei, his father. Zhao Longfei said as he grabbed Zhao Zhenhai's clothes and yanked him far away. Zhao Xuanji, his mother. If you don't mind, would like to have a brief conversation with you. Yuan had already guessed their intentions and greeted them with a calm smile. You're here to ask about the immortal monarch's blood, aren't you? The couple was stunned by his directness, caught off guard, and left momentarily speechless. While that is part of the conversation, we mainly wanted to thank you for helping our family. Jiao Longfei responded in a stiff tone. Yuan then said, unfortunately, my transaction with the clan leader has already ended, and I am only helping the Azure Dragon clan because you have something that I need. That's, just as Jiao Xuanji opened her mouth, Yuan interrupted, however, that doesn't mean I cannot make a new transaction with you too. If you want the immortal monarch's blood, I still have some left. Really? What do you want for them? Jiao Xuanji exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. No, we'll give you 2 treasures from our treasury for each drop. Jiao Longfei said as he raised 2 fingers before him. Yuan responded by showing 3 fingers. Make it 3 and you'll have a deal, so 6 treasures in total. Deal. Although Jiao Xuanji hesitated for a split second, he quickly made up his mind and agreed to Yuan's offer. Thank you. Here you go. Yuan immediately retrieved 2 vials and handed each of them one. Since the Mystic Sea Dragon clan will be invading soon, I'll give these to you ahead of time. You won't regret it. The couple immediately left to absorb the blood. 3 days later, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan arrived earlier than expected, before Jiao Zhenhai's parents could finish absorbing the blood. However, since they have already started absorbing the blood, they couldn't be disturbed, so the Azure Dragon clan had to deal with the invasion without them for now. Meanwhile, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan came to a halt just outside the Azure Dragon clan's underwater city, their 50,000-strong army standing tall, exuding unwavering confidence. Amidst the sea of soldiers, a lone figure with a familiar face stepped forward and spoke in a voice so powerful it echoed through the city, reaching even the depths of the Azure Dragon clan's living quarters. Azure Dragon clan, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan will grant you 24 hours to hand over the tier of the Azure heavens. If you do not meet our demand within the time limit, don't blame us for whatever happens afterward. That's the 3rd elder. So the rumors calling him a traitor were true. The people of the Azure Dragon clan were greatly shocked to see the 3rd elder standing with the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. Jiao Zhenhai appeared before them and sneered coldly, so you'll turn around and leave if we give you the tier of the Azure heavens? The 3rd elder laughed out loud before responding, of course not. If you hand over the treasure, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan will spare your lives. However, you'll have to come under our clan's name as servants. The Azure Dragon clan as servants? In your damn dreams. Suddenly, Yuan appeared beside Jiao Zhenhai and scanned the place with a composed expression. Where's the 1st elder? Did he still end up dying even after you saved him? Yuan asked calmly. In the very next instant, a surge of overwhelming bloodlust swept through the area as a new figure suddenly appeared. Yuan shifted his attention to this newcomer, a handsome young man he didn't recognize. The handsome young man then roared, I only lost that time because I had underestimated you and didn't use my full strength to avoid being exposed. It will not happen again. This time, I swear I will shred you to pieces. Oh. You managed to get a new body in such short time. I'm impressed, Yuan said with a faint smile. Sure enough, the striking young man before him was none other than the 1st elder, who had transferred his soul into this new vessel after Yuan's poison had destroyed his original body. However, having transferred his soul to a new body in haste, the 1st elder suffered a severe backlash, and his cultivation plummeted by 2 full levels, diminishing him to a mere true immortal. Whether the Azure Dragon clan hands over the treasure or not, you're dead meat, human. Jiao Zhenhai then stepped forward and asked, where are the rest of the Mystic Sea Dragon clan? I highly doubt they'd entrust such a massive army to you and let you come here alone. The 3rd elder smiled and said, wouldn't you like to know? Unfortunately, I cannot tell you. Jiao Zhenhai and the others frowned, feeling uneasy about the whole situation. What if there are more of them than the 50,000 in front of us right now? They all considered this possibility. After a moment of silence, Zhao Zhenhai spoke, "Is that so? Well, I have some unfortunate news for you, too. The tier of the Azure heavens you bastards so desperately want is no longer in our hands. We gave it away." "You what?" The first elder and the third elder shouted simultaneously, their eyes growing as wide as saucers. Chapter 1971, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 3. Chapter 1971, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 3, Why You're Lying. There's no way the Azure Dragon Clan gave away its family heirloom. The third elder pointed his trembling hand at them and shouted, his voice filled with doubt and disbelief. "Who do you think you're fooling, Zhao Zhenhai? We know you better than anyone here. You wouldn't dare to part with that treasure even at your deathbed." The first elder laughed out loud, not believing it for a second. Zhao Zhenhai sneered and said, "You don't have to believe me, but you'll end up fighting a pointless war at this rate." "Pointless? Do you really think the tier of the Azure heavens is the only reason we're here?" The third elder shook his head. The Azure Dragon Clan and the Mystic Sea Dragon Clan have been at odds with each other since ancient times. Don't you think it's finally time to end it once and for all? The first elder said. Don't you both possess royal bloodlines? Wouldn't it cause serious complications if the two of you were to clash? Yuan suddenly asked. What would you know, human? Just because we have royal bloodlines doesn't mean we're allies. If anything, it only fuels our rivalry. The first elder retorted coldly. What should we do? Zhao Zhenhai suddenly spoke to Yuan using voice transmission. It's obvious they won't back down even though we no longer have the tier of the Azure heavens. Should we just wait out the 24-hour limit and see what happens? This also gives my parents time to absorb the immortal monarch's blood. Yuan responded, while waiting may seem like the right thing to do, I have a feeling there are more of them than it appears. It's also suspicious that nobody from the Mystic Sea Dragon clan is present. They might be planning an ambush separately. If that were the case, we should deal with those present before they can arrive. Zhao Zhenhai fell silent, reflecting on Yuan's words. It was definitely suspicious that the Mystic Sea Dragon clan had only committed a fraction of their forces to what was supposed to be all-out war, and not a single true member of their clan was present. The more he thought about it, the stronger his unease grew. Since war is unavoidable, we need to make the first move and cripple their current forces before their reinforcements arrive. Having made his decision, Zhao Zhenhai summoned his weapon, a majestic blue and gold trident, leveled it at the Mystic Sea Dragon clan's army, and roared with thunderous fury, kill them all. What? The first elder and third elder were stunned by Zhao Zhenhai's sudden declaration, their expressions frozen in disbelief. Behind them, the army stirred with visible confusion and hesitation. None had expected the Azure Dragon clan to launch the first strike. In the very next moment, nearly 80,000 experts surged out from the city like a tidal wave, swiftly encircling the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. The negotiation has ended. Kill everyone. The third elder roared. And so, the Azure Dragon clan and the Mystic Sea Dragon clan finally clashed. The battlefield roared with chaos as countless divine realm cultivators exchanged blows, shaking the depths of the sea. Among them, the Azure Dragon clan fielded nearly 2,000 immortals, outnumbering the Mystic Sea Dragon clan, who had barely half that number at their command. Zhao Zhenhai lunged toward the third elder with unwavering resolve, while the first elder, eyes burning with fury, pursued Yuan. If you couldn't defeat me while you're at the God Ascension realm, what makes you think you'll be able to defeat me as a true immortal? Yuan remarked as he deflected the first elder's first strike. Don't you dare underestimate me. My cultivation may have lowered, but I can still use celestial chi. The first elder roared as he unleashed his celestial chi. Although it wasn't as strong as before, it was still enough to pressure Yuan, who'd increased his cultivation to the peak of immortal ascension. With number 1 under heaven in his grasp, Yuan fought the first elder while constantly being suppressed by celestial chi. Despite the vast disparity in their cultivation, Yuan wasn't being pushed back. Wait a second. His cultivation is at the peak of immortal ascension. But it was only at the peak of Divine Emperor when I last saw him a few months ago. The first elder realized this amidst their fight, which shook him to the core. No. It's impossible that his cultivation increased that much in such a short time. This must have been his real cultivation since the very beginning. Even if Yuan had told him the truth, the first elder still wouldn't believe it. Hey, I've been wondering. Aren't you curious about the second elder's situation? What? The first elder frowned. The two of you left him behind, after all. I have no idea what you're talking about. The second elder has nothing to do with the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. Yuan chuckled at the first elder's attempt to mislead him. There's no point trying to play dumb. Didn't you find it weird that the second elder isn't present at such an important event? He's already exposed himself. As a matter of fact, he's already dead. What? The first elder suddenly stopped fighting and backed away. Impossible. The second elder's strength rivals even Zhao Zhenhai. It's true. Do you want to know who killed him? Yuan pointed at himself and revealed with a cold grin on his face, the second elder died to my sword. Ha ha ha. You killed the second elder? That's your biggest bullshit yet. Yuan shook his head and elaborated, no, I didn't say that I killed him. I said my sword killed him. What's the damn difference? I'd love to show you, but unfortunately, my sword is still asleep. Instead, why don't I show you something else? Yuan stowed away number 1 under heaven and faced the first elder without any weapons. What trick do you have up your sleeves now? The first elder immediately increased his guard, as he had already experienced Yuan's trickery several times. Chapter 1972, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 4. Chapter 1972, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 4, A trick, huh? Well, I guess it may seem like that to you. After putting away his weapon, Yuan slowly approached the first elder. Seeing this, the first elder hastily distanced himself from Yuan. A profound light flickered within Yuan's eyes, and he spoke in a low but commanding tone, "Halt." The first elder was greatly shocked when his body suddenly stopped listening to his commands and halted all movements. Get on your knees. As if Yuan's words held dominion over his very soul, the first elder dropped to his knees and knelt before him. What is going on? What did you? Shut up. You will only speak when given permission. The first elder tried to speak, but not a single word escaped. His lips felt as heavy as a mountain, and even the act of opening his mouth was beyond him. He frantically darted his gaze across the battlefield, desperate to see if anyone was witnessing this humiliation. But in the midst of the blood-soaked chaos, where every cultivator fought for their life, not a single soul noticed the silent, one-sided submission playing out between Yuan and the first elder. What the hell is going on? Why isn't my body listening to me? Did he poison me again? But when did he do it and how? The first elder believed he was poisoned again, but had never experienced or heard of such a powerful poison. What's on your mind? Let me guess. Are you thinking that ID poisoned you again? Yuan suddenly spoke. The first elder's eyes widened with surprise at Yuan's words. So I'm right, huh? Well, fortunately for you, I didn't poison you. The surprise on the first elder's face turned to puzzlement after hearing this. If he wasn't poisoned, what could be the cause of this phenomenon? Since you're going to die soon, they'll let you in on a secret. Yuan moved his lips near the first elder's ears but spoke through voice transmission just in case. I was lying when I said that I was Dragon Goddess Yu's envoy. In reality, I am the Immortal Monarch. The first elder's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets from shock. The Immortal Monarch? What kind of nonsense is he talking about? However, as much as he wanted to deny it, it would explain why he was obeying Yuan's every command. Now, die for me. Yuan wasted no time and commanded the first elder to die. The first elder coughed up a mouthful of blood as he subconsciously destroyed his own heart. However, although the first elder's physical body died, his soul was still alive, and while his cultivation had dropped to the true immortal realm, his soul was still at the god ascension level. Yuan knew he couldn't kill the first elder so easily, nor did he care to try. Instead, he calmly retrieved Dragon God's vengeance and, with a flick of his sleeves, forcefully cast the first elder's soul into the weapon, leaving his fate to Dragon Goddess Biyao. The moment the soul was sealed within, Dragon God's vengeance trembled violently, as though roaring in fury, echoing the wrath of the goddess within. "I'll probably have an earful later." Yuan swallowed nervously. The trembling stopped a few moments later, and since the first elder's soul hadn't been ejected from the weapon, it was clear what Dragon Goddess Biyao did to him. This made Yuan wonder if feeding the souls of powerhouses to Dragon Goddess Biyao would help speed up her recovery. Let's think about this later. Yuan shifted his gaze to the rest of the battlefield, where thousands of mutilated corpses lay scattered amidst blood-stained waters, most of them belonging to the Mystic Sea Dragon clan. He thought about using the Immortal Monarch's powers to assist the Azure Dragon clan, but it'd require a tremendous amount of energy to command so many powerful beings, and there was still the possibility of enemy reinforcements. In the end, Yuan decided to just use his own strength for the time being. With the Dragon God's vengeance in his grasp, Yuan began attacking every single enemy fighter in sight, targeting mostly those within the divine realm since they were the easiest targets and were the most abundant. After being targeted by Yuan, the poor divine realm experts stood no chance as all of them were killed within a single strike. As the number of Yuan's victims increased, so did the strength of his weapon through its second unique ability. Not only that, but he was slowly progressing his unique quest that required 100 million kills. Unfortunately, he was still very far away from completing it. After slaughtering thousands of divine realm experts from the Mystic Sea Dragon clan's side, Yuan's presence could no longer be ignored, and he had finally drawn the gaze of the Immortal Realm cultivators. However, the Immortals were far too prideful to lower themselves by engaging a mere Immortal Ascension realm human, one who had yet to even set foot into true immortality. Thus, those who were also in the Immortal Ascension realm began attacking Yuan. "Why don't you pick on someone that's on the same level as you instead of picking on the weak?" A peak Immortal Ascension shouted as he pounced at Yuan. Yuan gave the Immortal Ascension expert a glance before using Shadow Veil, instantly disappearing from his opponent's view. What? Where did he? Before the man could even finish his sentence, Yuan had already arrived behind him like a shadow to land a critical strike. "Impossible," the man muttered his last words as Yuan brutally yanked the Dragon God's vengeance from his corpse and watched as it slowly sank to the ocean floor. "If you want to stop me, you'd better come at me with everything you've got." Yuan laughed out loud as he continued slaughtering the Mystic Sea Dragon clan's army. Somebody stop him. Ah! The Mystic Sea Dragon clan's army quickly descended into chaos, their formation crumbling under the weight of fear and confusion. Chapter 1973, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 5. Chapter 1973, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 5. Noticing how fast their army was falling apart, the Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's immortals could no longer sit still and went after Yuan. "About time I have some worthy opponents." Yuan laughed as he confronted a bronze immortal, and their immortal chi clashed. "What? I'm being pushed back?" The bronze immortal was utterly stunned that he was being forced back by someone still in the Immortal Ascension realm, a human cultivator who hadn't even truly stepped into immortality. How is his immortal chi so powerful? He's not even an immortal yet. The other immortals were equally shaken by the sheer intensity of Yuan's immortal chi, and the true immortals there wore grim expressions, unable to hide their disbelief. Yuan's immortal chi rivaled their own, despite still being in immortal ascension, while they stood at the very peak of the immortal realm, on the verge of stepping into God ascension. In the cultivation world, one only attains true immortality after transcending the Immortal Ascension realm and stepping into the ranks of bronze immortals. Though the immortal realm consists of only 4 distinct stages: bronze, silver, golden, and true immortal, the gap between each is vast, often requiring as much time and cultivation as ascending through all 9 levels of immortal ascension. Yet Yuan, a mere cultivator still within immortal ascension, had already surpassed even the true immortals. What would happen if Yuan were to become a bronze immortal, let alone a true immortal? How terrifying would his power become then? No one present could begin to fathom it, not even the god ascension cultivators, who already stood beyond immortality. We must kill that human now or hell become a huge threat to the Mystic Sea Dragon clan and our plans. The immortals quickly exchanged voice transmissions in secret, and after a brief but heavy silence, reached a unanimous decision, to strike at Yuan together, even if it meant staining their pride and shattering their reputation. Suddenly, the battlefield shifted dramatically. Without warning, hundreds of immortals, even those already locked in fierce combat, abandoned their fights and turned their focus toward a single target, Yuan. Senior Envoy. Watch out. They're all targeting you. Members of the Azure Dragon clan hurriedly shouted warnings to Yuan as they pursued the forces of the Mystic Sea Dragon clan going after him. Oh. Despite the looming threat, Yuan showed not the slightest trace of panic. In fact, a faint smile tugged at his lips. To think so many mighty immortals would band together against a mere mortal like me. I'm truly honored. To show my gratitude, Yuan said calmly, his smile widening, allow me to face you all with my full strength. What? The bronze immortal fighting Yuan was shocked to hear he wasn't even fighting at his full potential. As the immortals closed in, a profound, chaotic, and overwhelming aura erupted from Yuan's body like a volcanic explosion, shaking the battlefield and halting even the boldest in their tracks. What is that ominous energy? It's making my soul tremble. The immortals cried out in alarm, their faces twisted with confusion and unease as they encountered chaos energy for the first time, its presence utterly foreign, yet instinctively terrifying. Although Yuan's main cultivation had already surpassed that of his chaotic heart, he intended to use it solely to enhance his own physique. And with the unparalleled destructive force of chaos energy, his combat prowess rose to an unfathomable degree while his cultivation remained the same. Why did you all stop? If you won't come to me, then they'll come to you. Yuan laughed, his voice echoing with battlelust as he lunged toward the bronze immortal before him, his speed and power now magnified many times over. Overwhelmed by Yuan's chaotic aura, the bronze immortal instinctively took a step back. But the moment he turned to retreat, Yuan's eyes blazed with radiant gold. Where do you think you're going? Yuan roared, unleashing Dragon's gaze at full power, his voice thundering like the heavens themselves. The bronze immortal instantly froze in place, his soul gripped by an overwhelming pressure that crashed down like a divine hammer. In the very next moment, without Yuan lifting a finger, the bronze immortal coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed, his soul shattered under the weight of Dragon's gaze. After all the power he had gained within the primal expanse, especially with his dragon powers, Yuan's Dragon's gaze had evolved to a terrifying degree. It was potent enough to shatter souls outright, especially when unleashed at full intensity. Did he just use Dragon's gaze? Why does he know that technique? I thought he was human. Even though they weren't directly targeted, Yuan's Dragon's gaze was so powerful that it sent tremors through the souls of everyone nearby, leaving them shaken to their core. Not just Dragon's gaze, he can use Dragon Awakening too. He's definitely a dragon. We were fooled into underestimating him. Snapping out of their daze, the immortals steeled themselves and renewed their assault, launching a coordinated attack against Yuan with grim determination. Not daring to get too close to Yuan because of his dragon's gaze, the immortals attacked him from afar. Hundreds of martial techniques rained down on Yuan all at once, yet he made no effort to dodge or defend. He simply continued to charge forward, letting the attacks crash against his body without the slightest concern. The combined assaults from the bronze and silver immortals couldn't even leave a scratch on Yuan's body, while strikes from the golden immortals merely allowed him to feel the sting of real pain. As for the true immortals, their attacks were powerful enough to tear through his defense and draw blood, yet he regenerated any damage received instantly, recovering in full before the immortals could even blink their eyes in astonishment. What the fuck kind of physique does he have? The immortals were in utter disbelief, their eyes wide with shock as they witnessed the futility of their combined assault. Meanwhile, every time Xuan struck with Dragon God's vengeance, it would claim a life without fail. It must be a trick. Don't let him deceive you. Keep attacking. The immortals resumed their assault, their faces with deep, growing despair. Chapter 1974, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 6. Chapter 1974, The Mystic Sea Dragon Clan's Invasion, 6. As the immortals relentlessly unleashed their martial techniques on Xuan, he continued to ignore their attacks and struck whoever was the closest to him, reducing their numbers with terrifying speed and indifference, almost as if the difference in their cultivation meant nothing in his eyes. As time passed, Xuan's prowess only continued to increase as the Dragon God's vengeance claimed more victims with a dragon bloodline. Fuck. Why aren't our attacks working on him? Where did this monster come from? Scatter. Get away from him. I can't. He's too fast, Damn it. How is he disappearing before our eyes, even escaping detection from our divine sense? This doesn't make any sense. Though it appeared that Xuan was merely chasing them down, he was, in truth, weaving shadow veil into every movement, distorting their perception and turning the battlefield into a nightmare of illusion and dread. In the enemy's eyes, Xuan was teleporting all over the place while leaving behind clones of himself. Of course, these clones were mere illusions created using shadows with his shadow puppet technique. Moreover, the Azure Dragon clan arrived in force to support Xuan, launching a coordinated assault that both distracted the enemy and sealed off their escape route. Witnessing their forces being decimated and thrown into disarray by a single individual, the Mystic Sea Dragon clan's God Ascension realm powerhouses could no longer stand by. They finally moved, intent on stopping Xuan themselves. The Mystic Sea Dragon clan initially showed up with 4 God Ascension realm powerhouses, but with the first elder gone and the third elder occupied with Zhaozhenhai, only 2 of them were available to deal with Xuan. Meanwhile, the Azure Dragon clan originally had 7 God Ascension realm powerhouses, but with the 3 elders' betrayal, they were down to 4, Zhaozhenhai, his parents, and the commander of the Azure Dragon clan's army. The moment the commander of the Azure Dragon clan's army sensed the movements of the 2 God Ascension realm powerhouses, he rushed to intercept, but he was only able to hold off one, leaving the other free to advance toward Xuan. Because of their immense power and overwhelming influence, an unspoken rule existed in the cultivation world: God Ascension realm cultivators should not interfere in large-scale battles like the ongoing war between the Azure Dragon clan and the Mystic Sea Dragon clan unless they were the only ones standing or the situation had reached a critical point and left them no other choice. Of course, since this was merely an unspoken rule and not a real law, it couldn't be enforced, and there were always those who disregarded it entirely, acting as they pleased even if it damaged their reputation, just like the first elder and the third elder. Once the God Ascension realm cultivator entered the fray, Xuan was forced to halt his slaughter and turn his full attention to the approaching threat. His opponent stood at the second level of God Ascension, the same as the first elder. Yet, he radiated a pressure and presence that made him seem incomparably more formidable, as though they existed on entirely different tiers. Once a cultivator stepped into the God Ascension realm, advancing even a single level could take thousands, if not millions, of years. Because of this, it was common for cultivators in their realm to be at the same level yet differ vastly in strength, comprehension, and abilities. The first elder had only recently stepped into the second level of the God Ascension realm, and as a result, his strength fell far short of its true potential. In contrast, Xuan's current opponent had long since stabilized at that level, and from the aura he exuded, he seemed to be on the verge of breaking through to the third. I don't know how you killed the first elder, but you won't get to experience such a miracle for a second time, said the man. Well, see about that. Xuan suddenly used Dragon's Gaze without warning. Despite being hit by Xuan's Dragon's Gaze at full force, his opponent didn't so much as flinch, as if the technique had no effect on him whatsoever. It's very impressive that you've reached that level with your cultivation. However, before a real powerhouse, it's nothing but cheap tricks, said the man. I can see that you're a little stronger than that traitor, but so what? Yuan spoke with a calm smile. In the end, you'll still end up like him. When threatened, dogs bark in fear, which is exactly what you're doing. You can't even break through my celestial qi, much less touch a single hair on my body. Yuan didn't need to verify the man's words to know they were true. At his current level, he stood no chance against him in a fair fight. The only reason he had managed to defeat the second elder, who was at the 5th level of God Ascension, was because he had caught him off guard and poisoned him. Even then, he would not have been able to kill the second elder without Xian's assistance. As for his current opponent, he was very wary of Yuan and also had no openings with his entire body covered in celestial qi. You're right. Yuan suddenly spoke. I do not have the capability to defeat you right now. However, I can definitely humiliate you. What? The man frowned. Put away your celestial qi. Despite having his guard up, the man could not have anticipated Yuan using the Immortal Monarch's ability. What is this? The man was bewildered when his body listened to Yuan and began withdrawing his celestial qi. He hastily tried to resist the command, succeeded, and managed to stop himself from removing all of his celestial qi. However, had already removed some of his celestial qi by then, giving Yuan enough time to strike once. Don't move. Yuan struck using the dragon god's vengeance with all of his might, driving it directly into the man's chest. The man hastily retreated, but it was too late. By the time he managed to pull away, a gaping hole had already been torn through the center of his chest. What's this? Not only did I manage to penetrate your celestial qi, but I even managed to put a hole in your chest. Yuan acted surprised, even letting out a cheeky chuckle as the man stared at the hole in silence. Chapter 1975, Wielding Celestial Qi. Chapter 1975, Wielding Celestial Qi. How dare you, a mere mortal? Mock me? The God Ascension expert trembled in anger as he felt a sense of humiliation he hasn't experienced for a long, long time. In his eyes, it was akin to an elephant being crippled by a single ant whom he could easily crush with a finger. I'll fucking skin you alive. The man suddenly released a beastly roar as he abandoned his human form and grew into a massive whale that could cover the entire underwater city. When a beast reverts to its original form, its overall strength would rise exponentially but at the cost of greatly reduced mobility, a trait many regarded as the most critical advantage in battle. For this reason, most chose to remain in their human form, even in the face of death. However, the God Ascension expert wasn't worried about losing his mobility since his opponent couldn't penetrate his defenses without trickery. I don't know what trickery you used just now, but it will not work a second time. Even as he stood before a colossal entity capable of swallowing an entire city with a single breath, Yuan's expression remained unchanged with a calm smile on his face. In the very next moment, the whale unleashed a barrage of celestial qi, shaped into countless thin needles, but in reality, each needle was massive, towering like skyscrapers as they rained down toward Yuan with devastating force. Though consumed by rage, the whale had not lost his reason and remained aware of his comrades battling nearby. As such, he restrained his power, opting for these compressed, controlled attacks to avoid causing collateral damage amidst the chaos. As for Yuan, since there was nothing he could realistically do to the celestial qi, he was forced to dodge the incoming strikes. However, he purposefully didn't completely avoid them and would allow the celestial qi to land on some parts of his body so he could train his comprehension. Looks like you're having trouble. Need some assistance? Yuning suddenly asked. What do you have in mind? Unless I can get through his celestial qi, it won't matter. Only celestial qi can cut through celestial qi. Although my cultivation has dropped to golden immortal, I can still sense and manipulate celestial qi to a certain extent, she said. Though I have never tried this before, I can theoretically help you gather celestial qi through your dantian, allowing you limited use. It's a very reckless thing to do, and I wouldn't have even brought this up if I weren't in your dantian, or I think your body couldn't handle celestial qi. However, it's clear that your body is beyond common sense. An excited smile appeared on Yuan's face after hearing Yuning's suggestion. Let's try it, he quickly said without an ounce of hesitation in his voice. Okay. Give me a moment. A few seconds later, Yuning said, I'm gathering celestial qi now. Yuning began collecting celestial qi while using Yuan's dantian as its storage. The very next moment, Yuan coughed up a mouthful of blood as searing pain tore through his body, feeling as if every inch of him was swelling beyond control, on the verge of bursting apart from within. Upon witnessing this, Yuning was overwhelmed with fear and immediately ceased her actions, unable to bring herself to continue. Keep going, Yuan suddenly said. But it's only a little painful. I can handle it. Despite her reluctance, Yuning began gathering celestial qi again, albeit slowly. What is he? The whale stopped attacking Yuan when he noticed celestial qi was being gathered around him. No. It can't be. His voice shook when he realized what was happening. He's a mortal. Mortals cannot wield celestial qi. It shouldn't be possible. It took some time, but Yuan eventually adapted to the celestial qi coursing through his body and managed to move again. Of course, the pain remained intense, but it was now bearable. It's been a while since I last felt like this. In this moment, the celestial qi surging through Yuan made him feel nearly invincible, a sensation reminiscent of when he wielded heaven's supremacy, as though nothing in the world could stand in his way. You. What the fuck are you? The whale roared in confusion and fear as he continued bombarding Yuan with celestial qi. Now that he could wield celestial qi, Yuan no longer avoided it. Instead, he met it head-on, clashing with it directly and without hesitation. With the dragon god's vengeance cloaked in celestial qi, Yuan bore through his opponent's celestial qi with almost no effort. Yuning swallowed nervously as she watched how skillfully Yuan wielded the celestial qi like it was part of his own body. Even though he may have wielded celestial qi in his previous lives, to do so in a mortal's body is really something else. Yuning had already regarded Yuan as a monster of boundless potential, but what he was doing now defied even her wildest expectations, leaving her utterly stunned. What's wrong? Not so confident in your celestial qi now, are you? Yuan laughed maniacally as he shot toward the whale that loomed above like a mountain. The sight of Yuan wielding celestial qi was so utterly shocking that even those locked in fierce combat froze in place, their eyes fixed on him in disbelief, needing a moment to confirm that what they were witnessing wasn't some illusion. He's wielding celestial qi with the body of a mortal? Zhao Binglan and the others from the Azure Dragon clan were utterly speechless. Stay away from me, you monster. The whale suddenly returned to his human form and began running away in a panic. How dare you run after starting this fight yourself? Get back here, you damn coward. Yuan shouted as he chased after him. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.